Chapter 961. Savage Wild's Tomb. Amanda, like an elegant queen, took his hand and ascended with him. Her left hand, covered in gold armor, felt cool to the touch. Fang Hao was led upwards. With his back to the crowd, he gave Amanda a look. It signaled there was no need for this, he was just there to go through the motions, and she should handle it on her own. Yet Amanda, as if she did not see, continued leading him until they arrived in front of the royal throne. As those involved in the battle were leaders under Fang Hao's command, as well as the transmigrators from his lands. The commendation ceremony was led by Fang Hao. Still with a brief introduction, he quickly dived into the main matter. He began to honor the well-commanding officers and the valiant soldiers from the battle. This battle, although it was Amanda's fight for the restoration of her kingdom, was also about expanding the territory of his land. As the overall commander of this campaign, Amanda certainly deserved commendation. Especially since, in this battle, she exhibited remarkable leadership skills, taking down Blackhorn City in a nearly blitzkrieg fashion. Fang Hao spoke loudly, "Amanda, as the foremost contributor, you'll officially take over the entire management and planning of the Great Cemetery of Odis. You're also awarded 10,000 Warfire coins, 300 sets of Purple Temple Guardians armor, command over the remaining land forces, and the subsequent financial support from the main city for this region." Amanda stood up, bowed respectfully, "Thank you, my lord." An award of 10,000 Warfire coins and 300 sets in purple. To Amanda, these held no attraction. It was a standard reward for commanders, something everyone received. Airy. This was another aspect where she relied on Fang Hao's support to help her quickly restore vitality within the lands. After awarding Amanda, Fang Hao continued to honor the heroes who participated in the war. The rewards remained Warfire coins, equipment, and improvements to living conditions. After all, the undead heroes living in the main city lacked nothing. Warfire coins, they could use to purchase various items. As the heroes' awards concluded, the transmigrators below started to get excited. "It's our turn, it's our turn. Amitabha, I want a bone dragon, I want a bone dragon. Give me a hero, I want a hero. Give me Warfire coins, I'll go to the Trade Alliance and buy my own. I want Amanda, I want to be the Queen's toy boy." What the hell? Everyone paused, startled. In stream. Blue equipment signified high-level gear. Purple equipment, just a single piece, was considered a divine artifact, drawing envy throughout the channels. And here there was a windfall of 10 sets all at once. If a set included 4 pieces, that meant 40 pieces, a jackpot. Plus, command over 20,000 undead. This non-eating, battle-ready skeleton was the perfect kind of soldier. They could now sweep through bandits and drive out wild beasts on their own. It also provided them a sense of security. Mostly because, on this expedition, they hardly did anything but ride in carriages for half a month. They watched a battle between undead forces, and then stood here awaiting commendation. No wonder those who had participated in previous battles fought to join again. Collecting equipment here was far safer and easier than going out to fight monsters. Although they didn't receive any bone dragon or heroes, their hearts were still content. And, smiling backdrop, maintaining his lordly demeanor, nodding occasionally, signaling his agreement with Amanda's words. Very dull. But there was one thing he miscalculated. Chapter 962. Damn it, there's no feast at the gathering in the city of undead. You can't even count on food, not to mention a cook. Only the incense wafted around the royal palace, carrying bursts of fragrance. The gathering of the undead seemed to enjoy it quite a bit. But Fang Hao and the transmigrators were all stomachs growling out loud. Should have eaten before coming out. Amid praises, it finally ended. The undead left in groups, and the transmigrators rushed out as well. It seemed they were all quite famished and could finally go out to eat. Inside the royal palace, it became quiet in an instant. After chatting for a few moments with Amanda, Fang Hao directly sat on the throne of Amanda. A system prompt immediately appeared before him. Blackhorn City has become your subsidiary city. You can rename the city here, and you have control over 22 subsidiary cities and 72 villages and camps. One has to say, the land of the Great Cemetery of Odis is much larger than that of the dwarves at the Eight Peaks Mountain. Although the population had dwindled over the years due to the bone tax imposed by Odis, the cities and villages were still there. They would slowly recover, or if necessary, could accept some immigrants to increase the population of the land. Amanda. My lord, Amanda responded. Fang Hao asked, what name do you plan to give to this city? After all, it was managed by Amanda and was also a war of restoration. It was necessary to consult her opinion about the name. After all, he didn't care what it was called. Amanda answered directly, Supreme Saint Golden City. It seems the former Anglina kingdom was truly prosperous. Not only was the land expansive, but the name of the main city also had the prestigious word Supreme Saint in it. Thinking about it made sense, Amanda was after all a dark gold level hero. The region she governed naturally wouldn't be weak. Fang Hao nodded, and in the rename section, he entered Supreme Saint Golden City. Blackhorn City changed to Supreme Saint Golden City. Do you confirm the change? Confirmed. Change successful. Supreme Saint Golden City. City level, 15 level original city. Attributes, mining/planting plus 30%, smelting/smithing plus 25%, undead conversion speed plus 25%, human reproduction plus 25%. Description, a city with attributes that can bring various enhancement effects, speeding up the construction and development of the city. A 15 level original city. And it belonged to the same category as the dwarves' Grey Iron City and the human Silver Wing City. However, now the Golden City had walls collapsed on 3 sides. And there were scattered white bones everywhere. Skeleton soldiers were cleaning up, transporting the white bones out of the city, and throwing them into prepared dirt holes. The city attributes also provided enhancements for planting, mining, and smelting, and at the same time, there were bonuses for the propagation of undead and humans. It was, on one hand, speeding up the propagation rate while on the other, increasing the conversion rate. It was quite efficient indeed. Blueprints unlocked, Law Court, Incense Workshop, Death Temple, Savage Wild's Tomb, Howling Haunted House. The number of blueprints unlocked was quite substantial. Law Court. Category, Special Building. Function, Laws. Laws, you can revise laws suitable for your own territory. Description, it allows revision of laws, which will serve as the standard and measure within the territory. Cities in the territory will follow these universally. Building requirements, ironized wood 2,500, fine stone bricks 3,200, cast iron blocks 1,000, metal parts 1,500, perfect essence 2. The construction of the law court was more like a research institute for dwarves. It was an institution with a very specific target. The Dwarves Research Institute was about getting some dwarves to research tools inside the building. Similarly, the law court was about getting people to revise laws there. Once the laws were established, the territory would have a standard for judgment. It could also establish local government offices in each subsidiary city to handle crimes and disputes. Increased security throughout the area. Here in Amanda, there are indeed unique characteristics, at least in other forces, no legal institutions have been seen. Incense Workshop, tough wood 1,200, stone bricks 1,800, hemp rope 800, leather 500, metal parts 1,200, red flame essence 1. Death Temple, tough wood 1,500, fine stone bricks 2,000, cast iron 1,200, metal parts 800, shadow stone 5, death trace 3, divine trace 1. Fang Hao opened and glanced at both blueprints. Incense Workshop is a workshop for making various types of incense. Types of incense like concentration incense are very popular items in the city of Undead. It's like how humans drink alcohol, not a necessity, but still fervently enjoyed by many. Death Temple is an exclusive temple for the god of Undead and is very common in Undead camps. However, for Fang Hao, it wasn't very useful since his territory possessed the pantheon where the god of Undead was also enshrined. As he continued to look further, Fang Hao suddenly felt a surge of joy. There were barracks blueprints. Savage Wild's Tomb, orange. Category, Special Building. Recruit, Bone Giant. Construction requirement, tough wood 5,300, stone bricks 8,500, iron 3,500, cast iron 1,500, death trace 15, shadow stone 10. Description, lost ancient undead from the wilds. Orange barracks blueprint. This indeed was a pleasant surprise. For the transmigrator forces, heroes and special barracks are what everyone pursues. If someone were to say in the channel that they have a hero or have acquired a special barracks blueprint, then, the title of a big shot would automatically fall upon you. Impossible to shake off. The only orange barracks within the territory before was the ancient burial pit which recruited Nisbet. Now, another orange barracks blueprint had finally appeared. Since Fang Hao hadn't participated in last night's battle and hadn't seen the bone giant, he could only speculate. Bone giant, a massive skeleton. Owning the name giant, its size surely couldn't be less than that of a troll. Otherwise, it would be called bone troll, why bother calling it a giant? Feeling somewhat excited, he even wanted to start building right away to see what the orange troops looked like. If they were formidable or not. But now was not the time, as the blueprints had not been fully reviewed, and the treasure chests were yet to be opened. Suppressing the joy in his heart, he continued to check the last blueprint. Then, his heart leapt again. Howling Haunted House, purple. Category, Special Building. Recruit, Soul Coffin. Construction requirement, tough wood 2200, stone bricks 5000, iron 1500, cast iron 800, death trace 8, shadow stone 4. Description, a stone coffin inscribed with malicious curses, imprisoning tormented souls. When the soul coffin is opened, the entire battlefield will be filled with piercing howls. Another purple barracks blueprint. Blackhorn City really was a good place. If only he had known earlier, he should have attacked here to unlock these blueprints. The recruited troops are called soul coffins. Looking at the description, it seems related to coffins and souls. All in all, the blueprints obtained from conquering the city this time were quite substantial. The orange and purple barracks would allow the territory to step up to a greater level of strength. Fang Hao closed the Book of Lords with satisfaction. A smile covered his face. He wasn't hungry anymore, just feeling that this place was really great. Looking toward Amanda, Fang Hao asked softly, "Amanda, do we have any officials specifically tasked with revising laws in the courthouse?" Last time, after capturing Grey Iron City, the dwarves in the institute were unaffected. So, there should also be some related staff in this courthouse, right? Amanda shook her head. This morning, I checked the buildings in the city. The courthouse has long been closed, and currently, there are no related personnel. During Odie's rule, all these procedures that made rules complicated were eliminated. The building was already abandoned and merely not demolished. Let alone having any officials to form laws. Fang Hao nodded and continued, "Well, I plan to rebuild the courthouse, and when that time comes, you can arrange for people to come over and establish a set of laws suitable for the development of the territory." "Yes, my lord," Amanda promptly agreed. Establishing a uniform set of laws is beneficial to the entire territory. Chapter 963. Then, the two discussed some issues regarding future development. Currently, there were two problems that needed resolution. One was the reconstruction of Golden City and the other cities that had been destroyed. The second was the problem of a population shortfall. The first problem was easy to resolve after the two had discussed it. They settled on a plan. Fang Hao would arrange military forces and various resources to help Amanda rebuild the cities. In terms of the number of labor forces that could be mobilized, restoring the cities was not difficult. The second point, the loss of population, was the main issue. In the villages within the territory, 9 out of 10 were empty, their populations having been captured by Odis and transformed into the undead. The common people transformed lacked intelligence. Even those without intelligence had been largely depleted in the Great Battle. One could say that to recover the population level of the Anglina Kingdom era, would require the existing humans not to do anything but procreate at home, which wouldn't recover for hundreds of years. This problem was currently difficult to solve. After a brief discussion, Fang Hao actually offered some suggestions. For logging and mining, he could provide a significant number of skeleton workers for Amanda. The freed-up land could then be made available for other races to inhabit. Or the land could be leased to other people for use. For example, the former Golden Valley area could be allocated to the Fairy clan for farming. With the good quality of the land and the Fairy clan's talent in agriculture, the yield would surely be excellent. At the same time, Amanda could also enact specific policies, encouraging higher birth rates to compensate for the previous population loss. Amanda nodded in agreement at Fang Hao's suggestions, and asked, "Besides providing land to the Fairy clan, do you have any suggestions regarding the population issue?" Fang Hao thought for a moment, then replied, "If there are no demands by the race, I think orcs could be a good choice. Compared to humans, orcs live in more densely populated and complex areas. Moreover, orcs have a tradition of relocating villages and are not as resistant as humans to leave an established village. However, the city's attributes here cater to increasing human reproduction. Orcs are not included in that, so Amanda's opinion is still needed. Orcs are naturally savage and warlike, not suitable for gathering or farming, and are also difficult to manage, Amanda replied. She clearly was not in favor of allowing orcs to settle. Fang Hao had no better suggestion. He could only say, let's both keep an eye out for any better solutions. Amanda nodded, okay. That concluded the discussion about the population issue. Amanda then had the entire region's sand table brought out. The huge sand table meticulously depicted the entire region's villages, cities, mountains, and rivers. After recording it with the Book of Lords, the entire region map was directly recorded into the Book of Lords Grand Map. The map's fog lifted all at once, displaying the overall terrain. They talked for a while inside the royal palace. Then Amanda led him to the royal palace's backyard. In a corner of the courtyard, several treasure chests were openly placed. Amanda said, I can't open these treasure chests, I heard from Dong Jiayu that only you transmigrators can open them. Fang Hao looked towards the treasure chest area, seeing 1 platinum treasure chest, 6 gold treasure chests, and 2 silver treasure chests. The quantity was still considerable, though fewer compared to the last conquest of 8 Peaks Mountain. He remembered that after capturing Grey Iron City, there were over a dozen gold treasure chests and more than 20 silver ones. But at that time, Dong Jiayu led troops and cleared the dwarf cities one by one. While Amanda took a direct route, capturing cities en route and ignoring the others. But these did not matter. It wasn't worth making the army take a detour just for a treasure chest. Slowing down the marching speed. Okay, let me see, Fang Hao said, nodding. Amanda, accompanied by others, left the area and returned to the royal palace. She evidently wasn't very interested in the business of opening treasure chests. Ignoring the departure of Amanda and her entourage, he walked directly towards the platinum treasure chest. He opened it. Swish, beams of light instantly appeared, dazzling to the eyes. Received, Sorcery Sanctum Blueprint, purple, Skeleton Pillar Construction Blueprint, purple, Tomb Guardian Breastplate Crafting Blueprint, blue, Tomb Guardian Greaves Crafting Blueprint, blue, Tomb Guardian Helmet Crafting Blueprint, blue, Tomb Guardian Gloves Crafting Blueprint, blue, Tomb Guardian Face Guard Crafting Blueprint, blue, Barbaric Giant Battle Armor Crafting Blueprint, blue, Barbaric Giant Battle Boots Crafting Blueprint, blue, Giant Chain Crafting Blueprint, blue, Skeleton Sculpture Crafting Blueprint, blue, Shadowstone 355, Warfire Coin 892. The rewards from the platinum treasure chest were still impressively substantial. Blueprints scattered all around. A mess of them everywhere. Fang Hao carefully discerned a few, noticing several beams of purple light. The rest were blue, and far more numerous than before. It was somewhat unfortunate that no orange blueprints appeared. He inspected them one by one. Sorcery Sanctum, Hard Resilient Wood 2200, Fine Stonework Bricks 3200, Cast Iron Blocks 850, Metal Parts 500, Shadow Stone 10, Essence of Magic 3, Perfect Essence 2. Description: a secret laboratory filled with chaos, filth, and agony, conducting research on dark deathly sorcery. A purple special building. From the description, it belonged to a magical laboratory of the undead. Chaos, filth, agony. These words conveyed the feeling of a twisted prison. Chapter 964. Moreover, within the territory, undead mages and undead magic had always been on the fringes of combat power. It indeed supplemented some long-range combat capabilities but was never the main force, always appearing to be expendable. Fang Hao hoped that with the introduction of this building, undead magic classes would be able to see some improvement. After all, it was a purple special building, so it wouldn't be too shabby. He collected the blueprint and continued to look at the next one. Skeleton Pillar, Refined Stonework 1500, Cast Iron Blocks 250, Metal Parts 120, Living Creature White Bones 100. Description: columns made from the bones of living creatures, filled with the power of death. It was also a purple blueprint. Its specific function was not described. Only after building it would he see its effects. He continued to look down. All the blueprints that followed were blue in color. Tomb Guardian Set. One could tell from the name that it was equipment for undead soldiers. The set consisted of 5 parts, including a breastplate, greaves, helm, gauntlets, and a face guard, which was an additional piece compared to normal sets. That is, a mask. All 5 components reached level 3 defense. The set's attribute was called Tomb Guardian. Tomb Guardian, within a maximum distance of 3 meters, for every ally present, defense increases by 1%, up to a maximum of 20%. Upon seeing the attributes of this set of equipment, Fang Hao was startled, then overjoyed. What good luck, this was practically custom-made equipment for him. His army's characteristic was its density, allies surrounded him from all sides. This maximum 20% was tailor-made for his army. At present, the territory's infantry was equipped with the Orc Storm Fine Iron set, a blue 4-piece set. Although it was quite good, the Storm set was suitable for a small number of troops. In Fang Hao's army, however, the conditions for the Tomb Guardian's 20% defense boost could be fully met. Therefore, it was more appropriate to equip the Tomb Guardian set in the army, and for a small number of soldiers, such as the 20-man patrol mission troops from the tribe, the Storm set was suitable. When the time came, he could match the sets to the tasks performed by the troops. He was quite satisfied with the effects of this set of equipment. He collected all the blueprints. The last 3 blueprints were all blue as well. Wild Giant Battle Armor, Wild Giant Battle Boots, and Giant Chain appeared to be equipment for the Bone Giant. But obviously, they didn't form a complete set. Later, he would see how big the Bone Giant was. If it was close to the size of a troll, it could wear the Troll Heavy Armor set. If it was larger, he would have to craft the Wild Giant Battle Armor. The last skeleton sculpture blueprint was a miscellaneous blueprint. It wasn't equipment or a building. Once crafted, it would just be a regular sculpture, with no attribute enhancements. Moreover, from the name, it belonged to undead sculptures. For him and most other races, bone sculptures were still unacceptable. He collected all of them, and the blueprints turned into beams of light that burrowed into the Book of Lords. Fang Hao continued to focus on the gold and silver treasure chests nearby. Although they were far inferior to platinum, sometimes they could yield some nice things. 6 gold and 2 silver chests were opened in succession. Obtained, blueprint for Turtle Shell Heavy Shield, blue, blueprint for Fine Iron Skin Cutter, blue, Hanging Door Plaque 1, Concentration Incense 5, Golden Bone Chain 1, Shadow Stone 85, Warfire Coin 198. Obtained, blueprint for Beast Horn Hand Axe, green, blueprint for White Steel Embossed Hand Saw, blue, Human Bone Skeleton Wall Lamp 2, Gold Engraved Wind Chime 5, Shadow Stone 78, Warfire Coin 204. Obtained, blueprint for Tendon Longbow, blue, blueprint for Eagle Pattern Round Shield, blue, Royal Conference Table 1, White Steel Harpoon 2, Golden Bone Nail 5, Shadow Stone 89, Warfire Coin 175. Obtained, blueprint for White Bone Claw Magic Wand, purple, blueprint for Thick-Skinned Crocodilian Breastplate, blue, blueprint for Black Iron Dueling Sword, green, Agate Ring 1, Glass Colorful Vase 2, Shadow Stone 101, Warfire Coin 214. Obtained, blueprint for White Steel Dagger, blue, blueprint for Dead End Bracer, green, Pure Magic Dust 5, White Bone Carving 2, Gold Trimmed Open Mouthed Vase 2. Shadow Stone 99, Warfire Coin 203. Obtained, Quadruped Walker Viscera Jar, purple, Rugged Plume Helmet, blue, Undead Rib Necklace 1, Golden Tooth Ornament 1, Shadow Stone 101, Warfire Coin 188. Obtained, blueprint for Goat Leather Shield, green, Roundwood Tower 1, Shadow Stone 35, Warfire Coin 67. Obtained, blueprint for Wild Boar Leather Knuckles, green, blueprint for White Feather Oak Stone Blade Club, green, Shadow Stone 42, Warfire Coin 72. Swathes of light flashed, and blueprints scattered across the open space around him. The treasure chests of the undead do not hold the same type of mechanical devices as those of the dwarves. This faction is more about the intrinsic nature of being immortal, as well as supporting items like viscera jars and transformation fields. They possess a technology tree distinct from that of the dwarves. The once spacious backyard had become chaotic and cluttered. Apart from sculptures standing on the ground, conference tables, and the ceiling touching round tower, Fang Hao also spotted golden dentures, golden nails, and ornaments carved from human finger bones with patterns. All these oddities from the underworld looked quite frightening. Fang Hao went back to briefly review the record that had flashed by. He filtered through it to see if there was anything useful that he needed. First, discarding the blueprints in blue and green, his gaze turned towards the sole purple blueprint. White Bone Magic Claw Wand, Hardwood 12, Cast Iron Blocks 5, Mithril 3, Essence of Magic 1. Description: a bone wand that fits very well with undead aesthetics, it provides a significant enhancement to dark attribute magic. Ah! That's not bad, a mage weapon. In the military unit types, the presence of undead mages had never been particularly high. Beyond not having a specialized mage hero to lead them, the equipment of undead mages had also always been rather average. Furthermore, with their slow movement speed, low defense, and the need for charge time when casting spells, it resulted in the absence of undead mages from many battles. Like in Amanda's campaign to reclaim her country, not a single undead mage was brought along. Their slow movement speed would have slowed down the overall pace of the army. With Amanda's blitzkrieg tactics, they simply weren't useful. However, the disadvantages were there. But the effects and power of mages could not be overlooked. Especially when casting spells in unison, bombarding the enemy's ranks with dense magic projectiles. The effect was not much less than that of artillery shells. Moreover, the negative status effects of dark attribute magic had a strong impact on living creatures. Now with this purple weapon in hand, and the making conditions not overly stringent, he could equip his undead mages with it upon returning. It was just a pity that he didn't have a mage-class hero at hand. Maybe he should ask Li Rong where the mages of the Mage Association who had died were buried. He could pay a visit to their graves himself. Well, that's a good solution to consider for the future. After recording everything in the Book of Lords, he filtered through the blueprints once more, to see if there were any that could be of help to him. Among them, there were two types of shields in the blueprints, Turtle Shell Heavy Shield and Eagle Pattern Round Shield. Heavy shields and round shields have their differences. Simply put, heavy shields provide protection in terms of length and width, and they're also heavier. Round shields, on the other hand, are slightly smaller and lighter but with reinforced hardness in places. Currently, Fang Hao had three types of blue shield blueprints at hand: Troll Heavy Shield, Beast Head Heavy Shield and Military Small Round Shield. The Military Small Round Shield, with its wooden structure, could be subject to replacements. There was no need to replace the heavy shield ones, though. Tendon Longbow could be put on the shelf as a product in the shop. Fine iron leather cutting knife and white steel carving hand saw are tools for processing and gathering, which could also be of help to the territory. As for the other blueprints, their use wasn't all that big. They could only be considered as an expansion to the collection of blueprints. All the blueprints were catalogued. Various items were still scattered around. Fang Hao's gaze also shifted to the Viscera jar standing to the side. Viscera jar, purple. Category: Magic Container. Abilities: Wild Run, Hunting. Chapter 965. Viscera jar, purple. Category: Magic Container. Abilities: Wild Run, Hunting. Wild Run, all limbs on the ground, running like a beast, movement speed plus 50%, limb strength plus 10%. Hunting, pouncing action, jumping plus 10%. Description: time to hunt the weak. There it was, the purple Viscera jar. Since the Viscera jars are exclusive to the undead factions, they are basically unseen on the market. Not to mention those with good properties and high quality. To reach purple is indeed very rare for a Viscera jar. The Viscera jar in front of him mainly increased movement speed. But this limb running and pouncing motion, it should be suitable for beast-like troops. Otherwise, equipping this Viscera jar to regular troops? When they run on all fours, what about their weapons and equipment? But it's hard to say, after all, when climbing stairs, ordinary skeleton warriors still know to bite their weapons with their teeth and pick them up after ascending. It might be worth equipping to see the effects of this Viscera jar. He set aside the Viscera jar, picking up the rest of the items. There wasn't much else he could use. After collecting several large vases, those incenses, the golden tooth ornament, rib necklaces, all items used by the undead, he left them to Amanda to handle. Moreover, he felt the fashion route of the undead was a bit off. Why would anyone think to drill holes in the collarbone to hang a gold chain? Or the idea of driving a bone nail into the ribcage? What happens when it rains? Does water get inside through these holes? It was somewhat incomprehensible, the thinking of the undead. In the regional channel, the lately quiet topic of undead wars was being discussed again in the region. The person who posted the photos last night hadn't shown up. Instead, some new names popped up. The end for the undead here, Blackhorn City has fallen, and there will be no great cemetery of Odis anymore. Damn, it's over? What is Blackhorn City? I've never heard of it. The Great Cemetery of Odis, is that the one that declared war on the Human Federation? How come the undead are fighting among themselves now? Did the attacking side win? Who is the leader of the attackers? Odis, I know, the king of Odis. The leader of the entire cemetery, a very incredible person. Cut it. A little trash, a tier 5 orange rank, we hanged and hid it. Boasting much? Tier 5 orange and still calling it trash, you sure talk big. It's really trash, its soul fire was extinguished. I have a photo of Odis here photo. Damn, which alliance are you from, that's so ruthless, directly seizing regional power. Exactly, which alliance? Are you still recruiting? I want to join too. The guy who just posted the photo, don't play dead, which alliance is it? Share some information. Well-fed transmigrants, having time to show off their battle achievements in the channel. Although whether Odis lived or died did not really concern them, it did not prevent them from flaunting their presence in the channel. Being called a big shot and receiving comments like awesome, and 666 did feel quite fulfilling. But everyone still remembered Dong Jiayu's instructions. They did not disclose any information about their territories, especially Fang Hao. After all, no one was foolish enough to challenge the rules they had internally set. Those not smart enough had already been eliminated in various ways early in their transmigration. The chat was lively. Suddenly, the door was pushed open with a bang. Dong Jiayu walked straight in. Seeing Dong Jiayu's figure, everyone stood up, regardless of age, and called out, "Sister Jiayu." Dong Jiayu nodded, then reminded them again, when chatting in the channel, don't mention anything related to this place. There are many hostile forces waiting for us to reveal information. The ones who were just boasting in the channel froze. Clearly, Dong Jiayu had also been in the chat channel and saw a few of them boasting. Hostile forces among the transmigrants? That was somewhat terrifying. Alright, Sister Jiayu, we won't talk about it again, a few of them immediately clarified their stance. The offline aspect was beneficial like this. Realizing the mistake and changing attitudes were always better managed than online, where arguments and counter-arguments could flare up. Dong Jiayu nodded and continued, alright, has everyone finished eating? Now, form 3 small teams and head to the location of the walls. Help deal with the production tools for the troops there. Yes. Everyone put down what they were holding, walked out of the room, and divided into 3 teams. They headed toward the collapsed positions of the walls. After finishing with the treasure chest, Amanda, accompanied by various guards and processions, walked with Fang Hao out of the royal palace. They headed towards the Viscera Museum. The procession was indeed grand. On the contrary, he, as the lord, seemed like a guest received by a queen, respected yet out of place with the surrounding environment. How was it, any good finds in the treasure chest? Amanda casually asked as they walked. Not bad, got some finds, there are still some incenses and sculptures left in the royal palace's backyard. Arrange for someone to take care of them later, Fang Hao responded. 2 golden umbrellas were raised above their heads, shielding them from the sun above. Looking back, he saw a skeleton attendant, holding them high behind the 2. Did the undead really need such a thing? Yes, Amanda replied, tilting her head slightly to glance at him as she continued, by the way, I wanted to discuss something with you. Chapter 966. Oh? Let's hear it. Generals to garrison and deter, as they would just be retaken. After thinking it through, he said, Golden City is now just a part of the overall territory, with the main city being the core area. Nelson needs to stay in the main city to look after the overall situation. Amanda said, in the entire territory, Golden City has the highest number of undead. Only by staying here can he make the most significant impact. I think it is better for him to stay here. That's not how it works. Every subordinate region in the entire territory has skeleton generals stationed there. Only by staying in the main city can he take care of the undead in the other areas, Fang Hao continued. He did understand Amanda's thoughts. The corpse which was very important for the undead forces. Especially Nelson, who was of high rank and capable of creating living dead. This was something that no corpse witch in Golden City could achieve. But understanding did not mean agreement. Now the undead heroes were distributed throughout the territory by Fang Hao to guard various regions. If problems arose, Nelson could make appropriate responses. But it was different in Golden City. Amanda's focus was on the development and planning of the Anglina region, which could not cover the entire territory. If real problems emerged, with Nelson in Golden City, he would have difficulty responding immediately. Plus, she had a corpse witch by her side, and Fang Hao was even thinking of transferring her to the main city. Amanda continued, "This place is more like a city of the undead, while the main city is, in fact, turning into a city for living creatures. Nelson will stay in the main city for now. If you have any issues here in the future, it's convenient for me to teleport and bring you over." "These are not problems," Fang Hao said. Seeing that he would not budge, Amanda had no choice but to stop insisting. She could only say, "All right, we'll do it your way, my lord." In future sieges, perhaps siege ladders would no longer be needed. The bone giant could lie down, and regular skeletons could climb over it. However, the empty and dim pupils indicated that they had no soul fire. This, actually, was a bit of a pity. A glance was all they took as they passed by. Soon, they arrived at the Viscera Museum of Golden City. Upon entering, they were immediately enveloped by a cold breath. "Lord, Your Majesty." The current use of titles was still somewhat confused. According to status, Fang Hao was considered a king, and Amanda, a lord under his command. But through all this time, the heroes had called him Lord. And in Golden City, Amanda's identity as a queen had taken root in people's hearts, and it was hard to change that quickly. Fang Hao didn't mind this, it was just a title. Moreover, he felt having a queen under his command was quite prestigious. After paying respects, several undead straightened their bodies. Fang Hao glanced at the front row. In addition to Nelson, there were 2 purple-rank corpse witches and a group of funerary priests. Each may in the safety of her territory with the military strength provided by Fang Hao. The viscera jars should be prioritized for use in the Viscera Museum of Fang Hao's main city. The remainder could then be placed in the Viscera Museum of Golden City. They entered the chamber. On the central stone platform inscribed with runes, a row of viscera jars was aligned. Chapter 967. Fang Hao went directly to check. Undead Nourishment, orange, Soul Drinker, purple, Stone Form, blue, Magic Torrent, blue, Bone Tenacity, blue, Super Strength, blue, Corrosive Sword, green, Malevolent Ghost Carving, green. There were still quite a few viscera jars, especially the 2 in the front. One orange, the other purple. They were wrapped in leather, apparently to protect them from knocks and bumps. Without much hesitation, Fang Hao stepped forward to check their attributes. On skeleton warriors. Spread out on average, there would hardly be any recovery effect, and the body is too fragile, even with recovery beginning, it wouldn't be very effective. It's better suited for sturdier, special warrior types. Viscera jar, purple. Category, Magic Container. Ability, Soul Drinker. Soul Drinker, increases the speed of devouring souls by 30%. Add latest chapters at Freeobnovlo only. Description, souls in torment are the most delicious confection. Increasing the speed of devouring souls. Which warrior type needs this skill? Fang Hao asked, what buildings were these viscera jars originally affixed to? Amanda glanced outside the door. A purple quality corpse witch walked in. After greeting them, she introduced, "My lord, Death Nourishment was placed in the Savage Wild's tomb, Soul Drinker in the Howling Haunted House, Stone Form in the Barracks, Magic Torrent in the Undead Mage Tower, and Super Strength in the Firing Range." With this introduction, Fang Hao had a much clearer understanding. The original viscera jars were matched based on the characteristics of the faction, saving Fang Hao the trouble of having to think further. With a wave, he gathered all the viscera jars into his storage space. Upon returning to the main city, he would enhance the rest of the viscera jars and send the remaining ones back to Amanda. After all, he had teleportation at his disposal, so it wasn't a hassle. Fang Hao left the Viscera Museum together with Amanda. In the time that followed, Amanda accompanied Fang Hao on a tour of the city's buildings. They met with several key officials within the city. Started, and then her heart leaped with joy. "Rolina? You're back." Rolina, dressed in her nightwear, her long legs enveloped in black stockings, leaned against the edge of the bed and smiled, "Yes, I had Fang Hao send me back first." As she spoke, she patted the spot next to her. Chapter 968. The moonlight was subdued. On the soft bed with pale blue curtains, 2 women, each with a distinct aura, yet equally beautiful and captivating, leaned on each other. Rebecca had delicate skin and a slender waist, but her figure was exceptionally voluptuous and mature, like a ripe, juicy peach. With a slight turn to the side, she created waves of movement. Rolena's figure was tall and slim, with skin as tender and white as jade. Her demeanor was strikingly cold, and her perfect, elongated body combined with her natural poise made her stunningly beautiful. At this moment, both of them were drenched in sweat, leaning on each other. Under the lamplight, they glistened. Rebecca's cheeks were faintly blushed as she grabbed the other's hand and spoke, "You haven't told me yet, how are things going at Blackhorn City?" Rolena laid back on the bed, gazing at the ceiling, and said, "What's there to talk about? Amanda took over Blackhorn City in one night, and by noon Fang Hao came over and took control of the city. There's no danger there, is there? What danger could there be? Otis and some supporters were directly snuffed out of existence by Amanda, and now the entire city is under her control." Of course, Rebecca wasn't concerned about Amanda, she hadn't even met her. What she cared about were the affairs of men. After all, war isn't a joke, and a single misstep could cost a life. She shifted her body and looked across, continuing to ask, "So that means Fang Hao's territory has expanded again? It's probably bigger than the entire 100 Cities Federation now." "The Federation's territory is nothing compared to his, it's incomparable now." Rolena turned to her side as well, the two locking eyes. Rebecca looked at her and ventured, "I've suddenly realized that Fang Hao is quite good. His character and personality, they seem quite suitable for a partner." Rolena was taken aback and said in surprise, "I've noticed something off about you recently, and I was right." Rebecca's eyes flitted with panic for a moment before she immediately replied, "What's wrong?" "We're just quietly talking about him, just like we would about any other man." Drawing the beauty opposite her closer, she continued to ask, "What do you think of him? What is there to think? He's just like that. He often mentions you when he's around me. Last time he went to Silverwing City, he even bought you some clothes. It seems like he really cares about you." "Oh? What are you trying to say? You and him?" Main City. The spring night was slightly cool, and a gentle breeze carried the fresh scent of flowers and grass. Walking along the path leading to the undead area, trees on both sides reached out their branches, hanging nightstones above the path, lighting up the dim road. Observing the competing flowers in the flower bed, Fang Hao said, "It really is becoming less and less like an undead place." When he came back, Fang Hao planned to bring Nelson back with him. But Amanda said that Nelson needed to stay there for a while to restore order in Golden City. As the beneficiary of this campaign, Fang Hao couldn't very well refuse. So he had no choice but to leave Nelson there temporarily. Before leaving, he still instructed Nelson to return to the main city after finishing his tasks. After passing through the streets, he arrived at the Undead's barracks construction area. Upon his return, he had already ordered the construction of all the blueprints he acquired that day. After having dinner and soaking in the hot springs for a while, the building time was almost complete. Past the giant stone tomb and the Undead Mage Tower, he saw a massive semi-underground structure behind. To build the Bone Giant in the Savage Wild's tomb, he had specifically chosen a particularly open area to avoid congestion when recruiting creatures in the future. After all, nearly 10-meter-tall giants, every movement they made was destructive. If it weren't for the fact that creature buildings couldn't be constructed outside the city, he would have wanted to build it there. He went straight to the building to check the information. Savage Wild's tomb. Category: Special Building. Recruit: Bone Giant. Bone Giant, Wriggling Spine 10, Death Trace 7, Star Silver 5, Giant Essence 1. Description: Ancient undead lost in the wilds. The recruitment conditions were still expectedly harsh. Apart from the wriggling spines, the trace and star silver were rare materials. Star silver was produced in the mithril mine, but its output was very low. The final ingredient, giant essence, Fang Hao did not possess. He hadn't even heard of it. He wondered if it might be a recruitment material for some giant faction. Lacking the final material, Fang Hao was unable to recruit. He could only wait to buy some in the World Channel the next day to see if others had it. Somewhat disappointed, he left for the next barracks. Howling Ghost House. The Howling Haunted House was an above-ground structure that looked from the outside to be an old, decrepit house surrounded by countless semi-transparent wandering spirits. If Fang Hao hadn't become accustomed to such sights, it would have scared the pants off anyone else in the dead of night. Howling Haunted House. Category: Special Building. Recruit: Soul Coffin. Soul Coffin, Wriggling Spine 9, Death Trace 6, Star Silver 4, Mithril 3, Stone Coffin 1. Description: A stone coffin inscribed with malicious curses that hold tortured souls. When the soul coffin is opened, piercing howls will inundate the entire battlefield. The recruitment conditions this time were more complex. They added mithril in a stone coffin. Luckily, he had received a blueprint for a green stone coffin from opening a chest today. Chapter 969. In the open space to the side, I found the blueprint for the stone coffin. After making 101 weighty stone coffins, I met the recruitment conditions for the soul coffin. I returned to the front of the building. Set the recruitment number to 1. Confirm recruitment. Hundredfold Amplification triggered, recruiting soul coffin 101. In a flash, 101 beams of light appeared, and soul coffins materialized on the open ground around us. The soul coffins still bore the image of skeletons. They were nearly the size of trolls, with a ragged burlap scarf draped over their shoulders, fluttering in the wind. They cradled a huge stone coffin in front of them. All in all, they looked quite terrifying. Soul Coffin, Tier 9 Troops. Racial traits: Undead, Hollow Skeleton, Weakness to Light, Soul Coffin. Skills: Soul Binding. Fixed Skills: Intermediate Magic Power Mastery. Soul Coffin: When the Soul Coffin is damaged, the unit enters an unstable state. If completely destroyed, the unit dies. Soul Binding: The souls of dead living creatures within 10 meters of the unit will be bound and transformed into wandering spirits to re-enter the battlefield. Description: When the stone coffin opens, dazzling light will shine across the entire battlefield, and countless vengeful spirits will break free from their bonds, racing toward living creatures to reap their lives. Goodness, just one skill. Only Soul Binding, which absorbs souls and transforms them into wandering spirits for the battlefield. Nothing else. Used well, the skill Soul Binding could be incredibly useful on the battlefield. If not, this troop type would be a waste. Of little use at all. Additionally, the racial trait also includes the Soul Coffin effect. When the Soul Coffin is damaged, this troop type will become unstable. Complete destruction means troop death. That is to say, the stone coffin is the core of this troop type, and that skeleton nearly the size of a troll seems more like a puppet controlled by the stone coffin. Having satisfied my curiosity, I directly said, "Go to the troop hiding cave outside the city and stand by. I'll assign you work tomorrow." The soul coffins possessed soul fires, though their color was somewhat pale, not the usual azure blue. A group of soul coffins bowed slightly, then turned and walked away. After inspecting 2 barracks, I continued on to the next location. Skeleton Pillar. Category: Special Building. Effect: Undead Loyalty +5, Movement Speed +5%. Description: A building that gathers the faith of the undead. Rather than being called a building, it was more like a totem. A thick stone pillar carved with various undead symbols and patterns. It was wide enough to be embraced by an adult and was about 6 meters tall. The effects provided were good. Beyond the 5% increase in movement speed, the 5 points of loyalty were even more valuable. Moreover, the increase was mandatory, comparable to a divine artifact. The last building. Sorcery Sanctum. Category: Special Building. Effect: Sorcery Experiment. Sorcery Experiment enables the undead unit to deduce and upgrade sorcery. Can deduce: Bone Manipulation Technique, God's Presence. Bone Manipulation Technique, Shadow Stone 5, Essence of Magic 1, Skeleton Troop Type 5, Warfire Coin 100. God's Presence, Shadow Stone 35, Essence of Magic 10, Skeleton Troop Type 100, Warfire Coin 2000. Description: A secret laboratory filled with chaos, filth, and suffering, researching magic replete with death. Seeing this, I understood the purpose of the building. A place for upgrading skills. But as a mage of the undead faction, I was frankly not very qualified. I had learned a host of fire and thunder elemental spells, I knew very few undead ones. Upgrading skills required spending materials. Besides the exclusive Shadow Stone, it also required essences and warfire coins. And what's more outrageous is the cost of God's presence, which was very expensive. It was enough to construct a special undead building. What a rip-off! Cursing inwardly, I still silently initiated the upgrades for both. Bone manipulation technique wasn't costly, so upgrading it was worthwhile. And God's presence, a skill I considered to be the most useful of the undead, had to be upgraded even though it pained me to do so. When it came to consuming skeleton troop types, I chose the most numerous, the skeleton warriors. Confirm upgrade. A glow suddenly ascended from the building, which also displayed a countdown. Bone manipulation technique, 71 hours 59 minutes. God's presence, 119 hours 59 minutes. He had checked all the buildings. It was also past 11 p.m. After yawning twice, he started to walk back. He had only gotten halfway when a system prompt made him stop in his tracks. The beauty of the lonely night. Lorana and Tobias's loyalty to you has increased by 2 points, current loyalty is 82. Oh my! Fang Hao was first stunned, then quickly realized what had happened. Before coming back, he had sent Rolana to Lyss City. It seemed like Rebecca had put in a good word for him, although the increase wasn't much. But it was still an improvement. He still hadn't given her the Rolana talisman, which should raise her loyalty to a decent level. Thinking this, he headed back towards the Viscera Museum. Upon entering the Viscera Museum, the burial priests were, as usual, busy with their own tasks. Fang Hao took out the viscera jars he acquired, as well as the remains of heroes like Odis whose divine souls had been eradicated, and handed them over to the priests for safekeeping. He would come back to deal with them tomorrow. After leaving the Viscera Museum, he returned to his room to rest. The next day, early morning. Fang Hao, I'm going to kill you! A shriek echoed from within the room. Angia, clad in a tight camisole and wearing nightfall silk suspender stockings on her legs, had her wheat-colored skin flushed red with anger. One hand twisted Fang Hao's arm behind his back, pinning him down onto the bed mercilessly. With her other hand, she scolded while yanking his hair. Meanwhile, Ira had already dressed and was tidying her hair at the vanity, frequently looking back worried that Angia might be too harsh and actually harm their tender-skinned master. Angia, I was wrong, didn't we agree on this? You can't blame me. Pinned on the bed, Fang Hao turned his head trying to explain. He kept signaling to Ira with his eyes. Ira, with a face full of amusement, did not intervene as Angia wasn't using too much force. After observing for a while, she whispered to Angia not to break anything, then went out to prepare breakfast. After the sound of a door closing, a brief silence took over the room, then embarrassed and annoyed voices picked up again. Are you an eel, wriggling everywhere? I'll kill you! Even with tougher skin, the chaotic punches and hair pulling were still painful. Okay, Angia, I was wrong, it was you who suggested we try it last night. You can't blame me either. Bullshit, is that what I meant? It won't hurt next time, really. You asterisk. A flurry of punches landed, eliciting cries of pain from Fang Hao. The cause of Angia's outburst still stemmed from that novelist. In the latest chapter, he wrote some rather explicit and daring scenes. Angia, always bold, discussed with Ira and insisted on waiting for Fang Hao to return past 11 p.m. They wanted to try out the positions described in the book. The initial ones were okay, but as they went on to navigate the valley path, there were some bad reactions. This morning, she felt discomfort all over. Upon waking up, she gave Fang Hao a good thrashing, accusing him of not following the book's instructions and recklessly improvising. Hard to explain these things, so he could only say it would be better next time. After quite a beating, Angia's rage subsided slightly. She got up, put on a jacket and said, "Swap today's installment of the novel for me." Fang Hao sat up and responded, "The author hasn't updated it yet." The two left the room and went downstairs to eat. Little White, also descending from the upper floor, kept inquiring about last night's events with a face full of curiosity. After breakfast, Fang Hao went straight to the Viscera Museum. He had the burial priests bring out all the viscera jars that had been delivered the previous night. Firstly, he placed the 2 viscera jars, Death Nourishment and Soul Drinker, in the receptacles of the 2 buildings, Savage Wild's Tomb and Howling Ghost House, respectively. Then, he began to check the remaining viscera jars. Chapter 970. A line of funeral priests stood at the back, holding viscera jars. Fang Hao then began with the existing viscera jars. In addition to the recently placed Death Nourishment and Soul Drinker, the main city already possessed 5 viscera jars. Among them, Power of Thunder was dark gold, Magic Empowerment and Killing Proficiency were orange. Lightning Speed was purple, and the very first stored revival was slightly lower in quality, blue. He compared the qualities and the attributes they conferred. It seemed that they were all more suitable for the characteristics of the territory's military units than the ones behind him. There was no need to swap them out. Only, the position for the viscera jar in the Undead Cavalry Building Corridor of the Dead was empty. The Undead Cavalry was not very useful in Fang Hao's hands. In the initial stages of development, the cavalry were responsible for exploration and patrolling tasks. But later on, ordinary undead took over patrolling duties, leaving the Undead Cavalry utterly unused. During Legion battles, they usually recruited around 10,000. Their main role was to escort and expedite travel, they were seldom used on the main battlefield. After selecting from the returned viscera jars, he first tested the purple Wild Run viscera jar's effect. It indeed increased movement speed but changed the mode of attack from the cavalry's slashing to trampling by the skeleton horses. If they reached their target and the horses' hooves could trample them to death, good, if not, the charge was in vain. Fang Hao then removed the Wild Run from the cavalry building. In the end, he chose the stone form, blue, viscera jar. Viscera jar. Category, Magic Container. Ability, Petrification. Petrification, Skeletal Petrification, Physical damage received 10%. Description, a natural stone armor. After the effect of the viscera jar took hold, both the skeleton horses and the cavalry sitting on them had a layer of stony plagues form on the surface of their bones. It didn't look particularly appealing, but the effect was quite good. After confirming the viscera jar, the remaining jars, including the purple Wild Run, were all exchanged directly via the channel to Dong Jiayu, who stayed in Golden City. She was to hand these jars to Amanda. After all, Golden City also had undead units that needed the enhancement of viscera jars. After stepping out of the Viscera Museum, Fang Hao once again headed to the city outskirts to discuss the nearby patrol arrangements. 100 Cities Federation. Fort Santa. Inside a temporary meeting room, the management of the Federation army sat silently at one end. On the opposite side were several skeletons. The leader was someone the members of the Federation recognized. The corpse witch of Blackhorn City, Arlene. Behind Arlene were several other undead. One of the undead had a peculiar appearance, a skeleton-like visage but with a pair of huge fleshy wings, resembling a vampiric undead. "What brings you all here?" Nidam, the commander of the Hall of Justice, asked. "Only yesterday, Fort Santa received news of Blackhorn City being conquered by the Blood Clan. Today, Arlene came with her entourage." This made them uncertain whether the news Silverwing City received was accurate. Arlene pulled a document from her bosom, pushed it towards Nidam, and said, "Blackhorn City has been renamed Supreme Saint Golden City. According to the agreement, there will be peace at the borders." The document was an alliance treaty signed between the Blood Clan and the Federation. It included the agreed-upon contents, including the right to deal with the Great Cemetery, peace at the borders, and the Federation's aid to the Blood Clan. Seeing the contents of the document, both Nidam and others who craned their necks to see the content revealed an expression of disbelief. The Blood Clan had really conquered Blackhorn City so fast? This speed was inconceivable. The Blood Clan has won. Nidam still couldn't believe it. Arlene nodded. "Odie's soul has been extinguished, this land will be managed by a new ruler. Odie is dead." This news was just as explosive. The undead, as the enemy of all living creatures, positioned Odie as the major nemesis of all living forces. His influence was comparable to that of the leader of the Hall of Justice, Archbishop Milton. But now, he had died so effortlessly. It was surprising and, at the same time, it instilled an even greater wariness of the Blood Clan's power. "Fine, humanity also desires peace, we will honor this treaty," Nidam responded. Arlene nodded without further comment. She picked up her copy of the treaty and left with her undead entourage. Soon, in the temporary meeting room, only the people of the Federation remained. After a brief silence, Nidam turned his gaze to Li Rong at the back row. "Mage Li Rong, just how large is the military force that the Blood Clan now possesses?" Since Su Hate's incident, the Federation's means of obtaining news about the undead had been completely severed. After nearly half a month of bewilderment, the connection was suddenly re-established by Li Rong. Moreover, it was possible to get news about the Blood Clan. Initially, the majority did not trust the authenticity of Li Rong's intelligence. But now, the credibility of her astonishing and precise information was apparent. Li Rong spoke gravely, the Blood Clan's military power is terrifying. The exact numbers are unclear, but the intelligence I obtained suggests that the Blood Clan needed only one night to breach Blackhorn City, exterminating Odis and his followers' souls. This. The room instantly erupted into commotion. One night to breach a power's main city. Chapter 971. This is truly too terrifying. If they could breach Blackhorn City, it means they also have the power to take down Silverwing City. They had just resolved the undead problem when, unexpectedly, the Blood Clan proved to be even more dangerous. He saw the faces of everyone present turn very grave. Li Rong spoke again, everyone need not worry. From what I understand, the Blood Clan and Odis have a feud, which is why they attacked Blackhorn City. Since we are allied with the Blood Clan, as long as we maintain this relationship well, we should not become enemies. A feud? The group caught on to another piece of intelligence. The Blood Clan immediately reminded the Federation about the terms of their alliance. It was also evident that the other party hoped to maintain peace with humans. But this peace was still temporary. In a situation of unequal power, the Human Federation could only live in fear. The group quietly discussed for a while. Nidam said, "All right, I will report this matter to Silverwing City, and we need to evacuate in the next few days. Everyone should prepare once you return." Yes. Everyone nodded and left the temporary meeting room. Li Rong, holding the magic wand that signified her identity as a mage, followed behind the mature mage Maple. After they stepped out of the crowd and boarded the prepared carriage, Li Rong finally spoke, "I can finally go back, I've had enough of staying here." Maple revealed a smile, placing the magic wand aside. She smiled and said, "Actually, this place is not too bad, at least there's freedom." It seemed that Maple felt this place was better than Silverwing City. Before Li Rong could speak, Maple continued, "By the way, how did you get in touch with the transmigrator from the Blood Clan?" Traditionally, members of the Mage Association kept a low profile. In meetings, they seldom sought the limelight like the Hall of Justice or the Church. Now, as Li Rong suddenly played a crucial role, the mages were quite pleased. Li Rong said, "A pretty decent man, very easy to talk to." Maple's eyes narrowed, filled with amusement. She naturally understood what easy to talk to implied. "Young people, that's good." After pausing, she continued, "The information from that side needs to be maintained. Now that Suhade is dead, the council is likely to train you to gather transmigrators within the territory. It's an opportunity." Li Rong, pretending to be somewhat resistant, said, "I just saw everyone struggling and thought of getting some information. I didn't plan on competing for Suhade's position." "We know, but someone ultimately has to do this job, and it will be greatly beneficial for your development," Maple continued. "I don't have any background, and I don't know many people in the council, it won't be my turn." Li Rong leaned back against the carriage wall. Maple still smiled, "That can be arranged, we'll discuss it with the president when the time comes." Li Rong thought for a moment, then nodded and said, "Okay, I'll give it a try." The carriage creaked and moaned as it moved forward. The two started discussing what they wanted to do once they returned. Maple talked about facing the conservative elders back home, while Li Rong planned to reopen her shop in Silverwing City, and to start businesses along a whole street. If Maple did not like her place, she would invite Maple to stay at her place. The conditions weren't bad, and it was very free. Meanwhile, the silent and eyes-closed Morse remained quietly playing the role of a guard. They reached Mount Treaty Keep and made the final preparations for the return trip. At noon, the spring breeze was fresh, and the warm sunshine bathed the entire land. Fang Hao lay on a sun lounger, nearby were Ira, Little White, Angia, and a few bunny maids. Everyone gathered under the oak tree. Each took turns reading the latest novel manuscript they had exchanged. When it finally landed in Little White's hands, it was her turn to read it to the others. Fang Hao pulled Angia closer, whispering, "You see, I didn't lie to you. It's just that you haven't adapted yet, but you will get used to it." Upon hearing this, Angia became a bit angry. "You're thinking there will be a next time?" His alternative approaches had caused her quite some distress. After calming down, however, it didn't feel all that bad. Plus, having an excuse to hit him was actually quite fun. If he wanted to do it again next time, should she give it a try? Just, walking the next day was truly somewhat inconvenient. Meanwhile, after Little White finished reading to the other maids, she also joined them. Seemingly a bit schadenfreude to learn that Angia had been bullied. Ira whispered softly, "Master, Angia can't handle it, but I can. Let's give it a try tonight." Little White was getting bolder with his words. Fang Hao glanced at Little White, whose face didn't even turn red, and said, "All right." Angia, furious, went up to teach the provocative vixen a lesson. The two of them chased and frolicked around the garden trees. At that moment, a branch from the oak tree above them hung down. It twisted into the shape of the fairy leader Shinasara. She spoke up, "My lord, there is news from Furious Lion City." "What is it?" Fang Hao asked. "Our latest chapters at Friognovlo only." Shinasara replied, 3 days from now, negotiations will be held at the border. Let's get ready." Helping the fairies drive away the Furious Lion City's army had taken some time. Furious Lion City had been dragging its feet until now, finally setting a time and place for negotiations. "Okay, I got it. You and Bronze Bull get ready. Try to negotiate but also be prepared for war," Fang Hao said. "Yes, my lord," Shinasara responded, spreading her branches again and disappearing from view. "Ahem." Angia let out a soft cough, then cautiously came over and gently sat in his embrace. She softly said, "Does it still hurt?" "I didn't mean to do it this morning, I was being careful." Then she rubbed his arm gently. Fang Hao almost laughed out loud at her antics. Angia was actually not very old, it's just that this world forced everyone to grow up fast. "It hurts, how could it not?" Fang Hao feigned anger as he spoke. "Let me rub it for you." Angia immediately massaged the heavily hit areas. Then she added, "You promised I could go to the negotiations, haven't you forgotten?" Fang Hao looked up, "You pulled my hair this morning, so you're not going." Upon hearing this, Angia immediately got anxious. "Come on, I didn't pull that hard." Seeing Angia really getting worried, Fang Hao didn't want to tease her anymore and said, "All right, you can go. What will you give me in return?" Angia's cheeks flushed as she hesitated. She whispered something in his ear. Fang Hao slapped her buttocks playfully and said, "You said it, no getting mad or pulling hair afterward. Deal." After thinking it over carefully, Fang Hao said, "We still have 2 days. Prepare yourself to avoid any dangers." "Prepare what?" Angia asked back. "Have Djinn get you a teleportation scroll, wear soft armor inside your clothes, and carry several potions," Fang Hao listed as he thought. Angia, being a blue hero and primarily a fighter, had difficulty retreating quickly from danger. So, it was still important to be cautious about her safety. "Am I going there to sell goods or to negotiate, carrying all these things? Won't people laugh at me?" Angia interrupted him. "It's for safety." In the afternoon, Fang Hao took Angia to see Djinn. He had Djinn prepare some items for Angia that could be used in emergencies over the next 2 days. Nearing evening, a message suddenly came from Lyss City, asking Fang Hao to come over as there were important matters to discuss. This left Little White, who had prepared everything, looking utterly despondent as she clung to Ira's arm and quietly complained to Fang Hao about breaking his promise. Fang Hao was also helpless. Moreover, he spent a lot of time with Little White, whereas, with Rebecca, only when she missed him would she find an excuse to call him over. He softly consoled her a few words, then activated the teleportation array and went directly to Lyss City. Stepping out from the screen, he was already in the Grand Hall of Lyss City. Walking on the plush carpet, he headed straight upstairs to the bedroom. However, halfway there, he was spotted by a maid who immediately led him back down to the parlor on the first floor. Entering the room, besides Rebecca, there were a few officials from the city. So there was indeed serious business? Facing the staring eyes across him, he clearly saw a glare from the other side. He immediately said, "Rebecca, you wanted to see me about something." After speaking, he took a seat nearby. Rebecca spoke bluntly, "We received a letter from Silverwing City asking us to discuss nominating someone for the Upper Senate." Chapter 972. In this period, the council conducted a meticulous investigation into Lyss City. Rebecca also paid close attention and responded to everything accordingly. Now that the front lines had started to recall some personnel, Rebecca, who played a significant role in achieving the alliance with the Blood Clan, was naturally not forgotten. This time, Silver Wing City informed Rebecca that she could come over to discuss this matter. As the city lord of Lyss City, Fang Hao naturally had to go as well. Didn't everyone agree on this before? What's there still to discuss? Fang Hao asked curiously. Back then, the Hall of Justice said whoever could solve the problem would be nominated to the upper senate. Now that Rebecca had resolved it, in the end, there was another discussion. Rebecca maintained a calm demeanor as she explained, the composition of the council is itself very complex, involving the interests of multiple parties, so any decision is very cautious. That soon. It's the council that's in a hurry, and we need time to prepare. Do you have any issues with the timing? Rebecca asked. One concern on the schedule coincided with the negotiations in Furious Lion City. He was slightly worried about Angia. But it shouldn't be a big issue, he could just instruct Angia, and with the Bronze Bull and Shinasara around, there shouldn't be any serious problems. Moreover, he didn't take such a small place as Furious Lion City seriously. If he wanted to, he could seize it at any time. After making up his mind, he nodded in agreement, I have no issues, we'll go together then. Good. Rebecca nodded. Having confirmed the departure time with Fang Hao, Rebecca then instructed the officials present on various duties. Especially now that it was spring, when all the work formally began. After getting things clear with the officials, Rebecca continued, all right, that's all for now. You can go back. The officials rose, saluted the two, and then left the room. Watching everyone leave, Fang Hao stood up and walked across the room. Rebecca's gaze sharpened as she stopped the approaching arm with her hand. She gave a twist at his waist. Then she pointed towards the open balcony. Through the balcony, one could see a graceful figure, looking at the moon while occasionally taking a sip of wine. Damn, there's still someone hiding there. Luckily, I didn't say anything just now. It was a close call, almost blew my cover. You two chat, I'm going to tell the defense commander about patrolling while I'm away, Rebecca said as she stood up and walked out. As she left, she patted his shoulder and gave him an encouraging look. The room fell silent again. Fang Hao picked up the wine jug lying on the ground, poured himself a cup. He drank it down in one go. It was a regular fruit wine, sour and sweet. Suddenly, he remembered he still had the Dragon Village dream he purchased from the Succubus Tavern that he hadn't drunk. Chapter 973. I heard this kind of wine is very popular even among the Dragon Clan. As soon as it was taken out of the storage space, a rich fragrance of wine instantly filled the air. It made Rolina, who had been gazing into the distance, curiously look over. After Fang Hao poured himself a cup, she took it and poured one for herself as well. She casually asked, when did you and Rebecca become close? Fang Hao's hand, which was holding the wine, paused slightly. Then he said, Rebecca is a smart and knowledgeable woman, men and women alike tend to like getting close to her. Rolina continued to press, how close? Ah, this. Intimately close. What you've done and what you haven't, we've done them all. But he also didn't quite dare to say that to Rolina. After thinking for a moment, he said, a confidant, I guess. It means we can talk about anything and help each other out with our troubles. A close friend. Rolina nodded as if she understood the idioms Fang Hao used. She raised her glass and took a sip, barely touching her lips when her eyes widened and she coughed a few times. It seemed the wine was too strong for her. Fang Hao took his glass, had a small sip, and found the taste quite potent, somewhat akin to modern spirits. It was different from the beer and fruit wines common in this era. This is the Succubus Tavern's Dragon Village dream. It's said that if the Dragon Clan drinks too much of it, they can sleep well. If not, just drink the ordinary stuff. Upon hearing this, Rolina tipped her head back and downed the whole cup. In an instant, a flush of red rose on her fair cheeks. Fang Hao didn't dare to drink like that, so he just smiled and sipped a little. Fortunately, with that diversion, Rolina seemed to forget the previous topic. She didn't pursue the matter of his relationship with Rebecca any further. Fang Hao leaned back and then said, Rolina. Rolina looked over in confusion. If you had the chance, would you leave this place, leave us? This question made Rolina frown slightly and a look of uncertainty flashed across her face. After a pause, she replied, I will not leave. After saying that, she felt it wasn't right, not in keeping with her usual aloof demeanor. She revised her statement, I promised to help you build your territory, so naturally, I will keep my promise. Fang Hao smiled. After the two of them shared a silent drink. He still took out the Rollina talisman from the storage space and held it in his hand. You said you wouldn't leave, right? Rollina glared at him, not understanding what he was getting at. I'm giving you this because I hope you'll consider this place your home as well and won't leave us, he said, and then handed the talisman in front of her. Everyone in the territory was actually quite afraid of Rollina. Not only was she powerful, but she also had an unpredictable temperament, like a mad woman. But over time, Fang Hao didn't really mind her and was somewhat afraid that after getting the talisman, she would use the teleportation array on it to return to Eternal Night City. That's why Fang Hao had to check with her again. Rollina had just looked up to take another sip of wine and set down her glass when she saw the talisman held out in front of her. In that instant, her pupils shrank sharply. Yet she did not reach out to take it, her expression rapidly changed. After taking a deep breath, she asked, Where did you get this? I bought it at a Blood Clan store in the Trade Alliance headquarters, Fang Hao answered. This reminded Rollina of what Rebecca had told her the night before. Fang Hao was always thinking of buying her things. Don't buy things recklessly in the future. If I want to go back, as if I don't know the way, I would have gone back long ago. She grabbed the talisman and tucked it into her bosom, saying indifferently, I've taken the item, thanks. The beauty of the lonely night. Rollina and Tobias's loyalty to you has increased by 10 points, current loyalty, 92. The system notification appeared, and Rollina's loyalty instantly increased by 10 points. Although she appeared indifferent, she actually valued the talisman highly. Otherwise, past gifts of bone dragons and houses only increased her loyalty by 2 or 1 point. This time, it jumped by 10 points in one go. But Rollina was right, she was now free. And she wasn't unfamiliar with the way back home, if she wished to leave and return to Eternal Night City. With or without the talisman, she could still go back. It was his transmigrator's mindset that led him to consider what Rollina might want. The silver moon adorned the deep blue night sky, and the twinkling stars, like splendid pearls, sparkled ceaselessly. Both of them suddenly fell silent, drinking their wine without saying a word, and casually nibbling on some of the small dishes they had taken out. As Rollina drank her wine, she leaned back, her right arm supporting her body, and draped her long, slender legs over the other. Do you really like my legs? Hey! He pride of having teased someone successfully. This kind of expression was the first he had seen on Rollina's face. Woman, you're playing with fire. Rollina was startled for a moment, pondering the meaning of playing with fire. She said, Isn't this what you wanted to see? Fang Hao fell silent for a moment. A loyalty level of 92 points was already quite high. Plus, with the hints she had just given, it might be worth a try. Without answering her, he stood up and walked straight over to her. Rollina looked up at him, What are you doing? Fang Hao's expression was serious as he bent down to push her shoulder, trying to push her over. However, it was as though he had pushed against a wall. Rollina didn't budge an inch, but instead, Fang Hao stumbled and plunged into her arms. He instantly felt a wave of fragrance and softness. Hastily, he got up and saw that Rollina's brow was still furrowed. Thinking for a moment, he said, I'll take care of you from now on. Rollina's cheeks and neck immediately flushed red, and faced with his somewhat domineering gaze, she felt a moment of timidity. She turned her head away and said, Don't go overboard, I have someone I like. Nonsense, the person you like likes me too. We're going to be a family sooner or later. If he backed down now, all his previous efforts would go to waste. He placed his arms around her shoulders. And his gaze shifted behind Rollina, towards the room, as he said in surprise, Rebecca, it's not what you think. Rollina was shocked and immediately let go, turning her head to look. Seeing the empty room, she quickly realized she had been tricked. By the time she turned back around, her body had already twitched. She couldn't believe he would cheat and deceive her like this. In the instant she turned back, he took the opportunity to kiss her on the lips. Chapter 974. The moon hung high in the sky. The silvery light spilled onto the balcony. The young man held the woman's shoulders, with their heads bowed and red lips pressed tightly together. Time seemed to stand still. Rollina's mind went blank, confused about what to do next. Suddenly, Rolina felt something was wrong. Her chest felt cool, and then a large hand grasped it. Her eyes widened, and her face changed color instantly. A dark red spear appeared beside her. She initially wanted to stab it towards him but, fearing she might kill him, she let it dissipate and replaced it with a fist. The fist didn't come crashing down, it turned into an open hand. While she hesitated, her blouse had been undone, and her chest had been touched for a while now. The movements were skilled, almost excessively so. Annoyed, she planted a knee between them and then kicked him. Bang! A muffled sound, and Fang Hao felt as if he had been hit by a cannonball. He smashed through the stone railing behind him and flew into the flower bed beyond. The well-tended flower bed was now marked with a deep trail. Damn it! Fang Hao cursed, rubbing his chest as he stood up. Meanwhile, on the balcony, Rolina stood there with a cold demeanor, readying her clothes and wiping her mouth. The kick had startled Rolina as well. She was afraid of not controlling her strength well, which might force him into a premature transformation ceremony. Seeing that he was fine and had stood up again, she finally breathed a sigh of relief. She still stood there, her expression as frosty as ever. "You," Rolina was about to speak, when suddenly, a piercing whistling sound erupted. Whoosh! Pop! A flare shot up into the sky directly above where Fang Hao was and exploded. The crimson light instantly illuminated the entire area. Soon after, a large group of people rushed over from all around. "Who is this?" Clatter! The city lord's guards surrounded Fang Hao, with the front row holding shields and swords and the back row readying their crossbows. Their posture suggested that any slight move would result in their enemy being torn to pieces. Looking towards the balcony, Rolina's figure had vanished. Damn, she left quickly. How am I supposed to explain this now? He dusted himself off and puffed out his chest. He said, "Ahem. I am City Lord Fang Hao. I was just experimenting with a magic spell, and it got a little out of control. You can all go back now." The guards formed a square formation around him. They did not disperse, nor did anyone respond. The air grew momentarily quiet. Rebecca stepped out from the main entrance of the city lord's mansion, looking his way from a distance. At the same time, a guard approached with a nightstone, illuminating his face. Seeing it was indeed Fang Hao, the surrounding guards sheathed their weapons and returned to their posts amid the clanking of armor. Only then did Fang Hao walk up to Rebecca's side. They headed together towards the city lord's mansion. "What happened?" Rebecca asked softly. Fang Hao shrugged and replied, "Nothing much, just a sparring session that got a bit intense." Rebecca had seen the traces in the courtyard too. The broken railing, the flower bed carved into a trench. This situation seemed far from the casual tone Fang Hao had used, clearly indicating he had been beaten up. But Rebecca, mature and tactful, still took care to protect a man's pride. "She's just a bit headstrong. You should indulge her a bit." Fang Hao nodded. Thinking about it, his progress with Rolina today was still not bad. This aloof beauty. Not only had he managed a kiss, but he had also taken some other liberties with his hands. A major breakthrough, proving she not only didn't dislike him but also had quite a fondness for him. Otherwise, with her temper, she would have acted the moment he made any move. It wouldn't just have been a simple kick after interacting for a while. As the two walked through the corridor, Rebecca curiously asked, "Any progress?" Fang Hao leaned closer and whispered, "A little." Rebecca's face broke into a slight smile, "That's good, take it slow." Fang Hao nodded again, noting the local customs were quite staunch. It seemed Rebecca was even more eager to see Rolina conquered. Thinking it over, as they were about to return to the hall, he lowered his voice again, "Tonight, should I stay here with you?" Rebecca's cheeks flushed, and she glanced warily at the trusted aide following behind. She whispered, "No, Rolina is here. We're going to Silverwing City tomorrow. There will be a chance then." That's true. They would be heading to Silverwing City tomorrow, where they would have plenty of opportunities to spend time together. "All right, I'll listen to you," Fang Hao agreed. Passing through the corridor, Rebecca returned to her room, and Fang Hao used teleportation to return to his place. Silverwing City. In a mansion in the central district. After the banquet, women in light veils, their foreheads covered in sweat, left the room. Inside, only the mansion owner Grote and the invited council members remained. Once the room fell silent, someone took the initiative to speak. "Mr. Grote, you had us come here for something, just tell us straight. Indeed, we are all old friends here. If there's something, just say it directly. Grote, with a calm expression, poured himself a cup of vibrant red fruit wine, and said with a smile, actually, it's nothing major, just about the council nominating a sixth member to the upper senate. I called you all here to hear your opinions so we can unify them. Everyone was stunned. The matter of naming a sixth member to the upper senate was no secret. All council members were aware of it and had been discussing it for over half a month already. Chapter 975. No one answered. Someone counter-questioned, Councillor Grote, what's your opinion? Grote, this year's representative councillor of the Federal Commerce Association, and at the same time, an important member of the Marshall family. In this federation of 100 cities, he still commands a certain level of influence and status. Grote pondered for a moment, then spoke up, the nominee is Fang Hao from Lyss City, but as everyone is well aware, it's actually Rebecca. Disregarding whether she poses a threat to the Federation, once she enters the upper house, the entire assembly's situation will change, and everyone will be affected. With that said, everyone present understood. Grote intended to prevent Rebecca from entering the upper house. And rightly so, at last year's autumn assembly, Grote publicly accused Rebecca of over 70 offences. Only, there were oversights at the time, and no valid evidence was produced. The charges did not stick. Now Rebecca might not have the power to deal with him. But if Rebecca became a member of the upper house, with the power to influence assembly decisions, then Grote's days would clearly be numbered. The moment Rebecca took her seat in the upper house would be the moment Grote lost his councillor position. The crowd quieted down somewhat. Someone said, naturally, we would not want to see another addition to the upper house. Right, adding or subtracting one person makes no difference to us. Many wish to pull her down from her position at Lyss City, her entering the upper house I think it's very unlikely. Exactly, to put it bluntly, the Big Five won't let a sixth person enter the upper house to split their power, there's no need for us to stop her, she'll be blocked up there. A woman, what great things could she accomplish? People voiced their opinions one after another. In their words, they all doubted Rebecca's ability to enter the upper house. But though their mouths mocked, not one of them explicitly stated that they would vote against her. They had no irreconcilable grudge with Rebecca. Moreover, the more fragmented the power of the upper house, the better life would be for those beneath them. But since Grote had thrown a banquet today, they naturally had to speak in favor of Grote. As for what would happen later, that could be dealt with when the time came. Grote listened, still maintaining his smile. After the sound of the crowd's discussion subsided considerably, Grote continued, I will discuss this matter with the Archbishop, and if those present here are willing to cast a dissenting vote, the Commerce Association will also increase everyone's share this year. The crowd, caught off guard, was momentarily stunned. The Federal Commerce Association meant interests were at stake. Furthermore, with the church involved, Rebecca would definitely not be able to enter the upper house. They were but giving Grote a favor along the current of events and would also receive the Commerce Association's help for the year. Instantly, the faces of everyone present turned to smiles. Since Mr. Grote has said so, we'll naturally do just that. Exactly, a woman like Rebecca trying to enter the upper house, she must be dreaming. Right, we would never agree to it. The smile on Grote's face grew even wider. Raising his wine glass, he announced loudly, then I thank you all. The rest also raised their glasses and drank in one gulp. Good, then let the banquet continue, Grote said, clapping his hands again. The heavy doors behind him reopened. The melodious singing drifted in once more. Young women dressed in light veils, wearing nothing underneath, quickly walked in. They threw themselves into the encompassing embrace of the assembly members present. The night was silent, moonlight streamed through the window panes, casting silver grids on the floor. Rollina lay on the soft bed. Her gaze fixated on the moon outside the window, her brows slightly furrowed. What happened today? After a few drinks, that lad actually kissed her and even fondled her. She had been dismembered and sunk into a stone coffin for 100 years, hating the Red Duke who had deceived her and then dismembered her. She equally hated all men. She thought she would never be taken by any man, yet today, she still felt that emotion facing Fang Hao. Gently touching her lips, the image of the man's momentary dominance reappeared in her mind. Though he had played some tricks, if she had wanted to avoid it, she could have. But she did not dodge. It seems, he really does like my legs. Unknowingly, a smile crossed her face. The night was peaceful, and she began thinking about the identities of both sides once again. One side immortal, the other still mere human. Even if Nelson performed the transformation ceremony on him later, he would either be undead or a dry corpse. Won't mention the looks, which are somewhat unattractive. The man's parts can't be used anymore. Emotional problems have arisen. Will they end up in conflict? If they really do have a dispute, the undead lack emotions and treat themselves with cold violence, what can be done then? Even if their feelings for each other have always been strong. Should they sleep together during their slumber? Should they sleep in a wooden coffin or a stone coffin? Wooden coffins are not moisture-proof, which is not good for the undead, but stone coffins are too hard, and the Blood Clan are not undead, they have nerves, it's uncomfortable. Ah, such a dilemma. When she was with Rebecca, she never thought about so many issues. Just as she was tossing and turning, lost in her chaotic thoughts, the door was gently pushed open, and Rebecca walked in. She sat down in front of the dressing table. She took off all her head ornaments, and through the mirror, glanced behind her. She asked softly, "How did it go with Fang Hao?" Roland's body slumped. "How else could it go, just that way? I heard him say that you two had a good chat." "Nonsense, that's not true, don't listen to his rambling," Roland jumped up and said immediately. A smile spread across Rebecca's face. She continued, "I do hope you two get along." "Why? I hope you can move on, and live a happier life," Rebecca said softly. Roland stepped forward, "I'm already very happy." Rebecca changed into her nightgown. She continued, "What did he do to make you hit him so hard?" Roland's face turned red, thought for a moment, but ultimately was too embarrassed to mention the kissing and being held incident. She said, "He looked at my leg." "Ah? You hit him just for that, isn't that a bit too much?" The next day, Fang Hao, with Angia in tow, walked back from the Trade Alliance building. In Angia's arms, she carried a big and small bundle of various items. The time set with Rebecca was noon, so Fang Hao bought a lot of things for Angia before leaving, to avoid any danger during the negotiations with Furious Lion City. Upon returning to the Lord's mansion, Angia slipped the soft armor she bought underneath her leather armor and moved her body around, feeling uncomfortable. "This feels bulky and uncomfortable," Angia complained. Fang Hao adjusted it for her, "It's just that it feels awkward the first time you wear it, you'll get used to it." "Alright then." Angia didn't have much else to say. While helping her, Fang Hao continued to instruct, "Try to resolve the negotiation peacefully, and even if you can't reach an agreement, don't start a fight on the spot. Wait until you get back to safety before mobilizing the troops." "Oh, I know, you've said it several times already," Angia responded with some impatience. Ira stuffed all the scrolls and potions into a backpack. It was also slung on Angia's back. At the moment, there were only 2 pieces of storage equipment in the territory. One was Fang Hao's Book of Lords, and the other was a storage necklace in Amanda's hands. Angia had to carry a small bag. Moreover, apart from top-tier powers, both natives and transmigrators also carried backpacks. Backpacks, in the channel, were also hot-selling items. Once everything was ready, Fang Hao gave a few more instructions. Then he activated the teleportation screen and sent Angia to the fairy clan's dreamy forest. After sending Angia off, Fang Hao gave instructions to Ira, Little White, and the stationed commander. Once everything was in order, he walked straight into the teleportation screen with Dimitrija. Emerging in Lyss City, a maid was already waiting for them. She led the two upstairs directly. Pushing open the door, Rebecca and Rolina were in the room. Rebecca was organizing the items to take along, while Rolina just sat to the side. She crossed her right leg over her left, her skin like jade wrapped in black stockings. The tip of her foot swung back and forth, dangling a shoe in the air. Tremendously eye-catching, it made Rolina give him a stern look. Chapter 976. Blinked at Rolina. There was a slight flush on Rolina's icy cheeks. She turned away with a pout. Fang Hao's gaze moved to Rebecca, who was sitting at the desk, her head lowered as she wrote something. He asked, "When do we leave?" "We're leaving right away." "Take these with you for now, you might need them later," Rebecca said, pointing to a wooden chest nearby. Fang Hao went over and opened it, the dazzling glow of gold shining so brightly it hurt his eyes. Ions of Warfire cards. These gold coins from Rebecca could be used as change. After all, Each warfire card held significant value. This trip was about entering the Senate. It meant taking some losses and spending some money to buy an identity for himself, laying the groundwork for future power in the 100 Cities Council. Add latest chapters at free.novlo only. He packed the chest of gold coins into his storage space. Meanwhile, Rebecca handed a letter she had written to an official waiting outside the door. She then summoned 4 Lionheart Knights who were on reserve outside, appointed them as escorts, and returned to Fang Hao's side, saying, "All right, let's go." Fang Hao nodded. He activated the transportation screen, and the group vanished on the spot. When they reappeared, they were already within Li Rong City. Li Rong was still at Sant Fortress. She would likely be recalled by the Federation soon. After all, she wasn't part of the military, and her skills were only at the level of an apprentice. With the war over, there was no use for her to stay there. After explaining things to the guards who came up to them, contacted Olivia through the sound-transmitting shell. As her best friend, Olivia naturally welcomed Rebecca's visit. Fang Hao, with his arm around Rebecca's slim waist, countered, "But if Olivia isn't a counselor, what good is her support?" Rebecca, upon hearing him speak that way about her only best friend, turned around and gave him a playful slap, puffing up and saying, "Although she is not a counselor, her family has counselors, and her husband is the head of the Hall of Justice." "Ah, so this Olivia's family was pretty powerful." "Understood," Fang Hao responded. The carriage creaked and jolted along the bumpy road. Inside, the sweet scents made the journey feel less tiring. Finally arriving at Olivia's residence, they were led through the courtyard and into the mansion by the servants. Rebecca. As they entered the hallway, they were greeted by Olivia in a long red dress hastening towards them, giving Rebecca a big hug. It was evident from their expressions that they were genuinely pleased to see each other, unlike the superficial civility often displayed by high society ladies at parties. After hugging Rebecca, Olivia then turned to regard Fang Hao and Dimitrija, who had followed them in. She gave Fang Hao a small smile. "Mr. Fang Hao, good to see you again." "Yes, Mrs. Olivia, you seem even younger and more beautiful than the last time we met," Fang Hao replied with a smile. Without waiting for Olivia to reply, he stepped aside, and several attendants carrying parcels came forward. "These are gifts Rebecca has specially prepared for you, and we hope you will like them." Olivia looked at the gifts with curiosity. She saw cosmetics, dresses, and the stockings that Rebecca had promised her last time. Upon confirming they were indeed gifts between close friends, Olivia smiled, satisfied. She instructed her servants to take them all. After all, there were many who tried to get close to her husband through her. Nay, for the Senate was the city lord of Lyss, which meant Fang Hao. But in everyone's eyes, the real power was still in Rebecca's hands. Fang Hao was just a kept man. Chapter 977. Why can't I take on something significant and solve problems for the Federation? Rebecca puffed out her chest in apparent displeasure. Olivia smiled and said, "I'm just surprised that the nominated person would be you." "It's my husband." Rebecca, clasping Fang Hao's arm, pulled him closer to her side. Olivia rolled her eyes, ignoring their display of affection. The two women began to chat. They talked about recent changes, and then about who had married how many wives, which families had formed alliances. The topics of their conversation were the usual gossip among noble women. Actually, it was also evident that Olivia never discussed matters related to Federation decisions or governance. She was a clever woman. The two women paid no attention to anyone else as they chatted happily. And Fang Hao couldn't just strike up a conversation with a servant nearby. So he had no choice but to sit aside and casually flip through the Book of Lords. Watching people boast and chat in the regional channel felt more interesting than listening to their gossip. Especially since he didn't even know who the people they were talking about were. Time passed, and the women's conversation remained lively, now apparently on the topic of hauntings in some old noble family's home. In any case, not a word about serious matters was mentioned, everything else, they covered. At that moment, the mansion's grand door opened again. A robust man dressed in a noble robe walked in. Doherty. Hall of Justice, stationed leader of Silver Wing City. Seeing Fang Hao and Rebecca there, Doherty paused, clearly surprised by how quickly the two had arrived. Olivia, with a smile on her face, stood up and clasped Doherty's arm, saying, "You're finally back, you didn't see them, they were sitting there holding hands, so close." Doherty, looking at Rebecca and Fang Hao, had a cold and imposing demeanor. Only when he heard his wife's words did a smile break across his face. Is that so? Absolutely. Olivia leaned closer to him and said, Rebecca and I have some secrets to chat about, and if you're not too busy, why not take Fang Hao for a tour around here? Doherty glanced at the two again. Ultimately, he didn't refuse his wife's request and nodded, saying, Fang Hao, come with me. Fang Hao glanced at Rebecca, stood up, and followed Doherty upstairs. They ascended the spiral staircase and walked through a long corridor. Stopping in front of a room. The door opened and the servant went in first, setting down the nightstone chandelier, lighting incense, and then serving hot tea and pastries. The procedure was performed very adeptly. All right, come in. Dimitrija stayed outside, and Fang Hao entered the room. Inside, Doherty sat down by the desk, while Fang Hao took a seat in another chair. Heart of Valor Doherty, Orange Tier 8 Hero. Previously, Fang Hao had seen Doherty at the council, sitting far away on the high platform of the upper house. Now at this close distance, he could also see Doherty's attributes, the leader of the 100 Cities Federation, yet only an Orange Tier 8. In terms of combat power, about the same as Dimitrija maybe. Doherty, a bulky man, was somber. Invisibly, he exuded a kind of pressure. Did you come here because of the upper house matters? Doherty spoke, his tone low and aloof. Fang Hao replied, came to Silverwing City for the affairs of the upper house, and here to accompany Rebecca to visit Olivia. Doherty, a bit curious, looked at the young man anew. Not because of just the answer, but surprised by his tone of speech. In this federation, those old noble representatives and council members, when talking to him, all trembled a little, not very confident. But here was Rebecca's young husband, speaking evenly, without any sign of restraint or nervousness. Observing Fang Hao carefully, Doherty continued to speak, "You're very composed." Fang Hao nodded, uninterested in discussing whether he was calm or not. Being alone with Doherty was itself a rare opportunity. Fang Hao said, "Lyss City entering the upper house, I want to know the attitude of Doherty the leader." Asking that, are you in a position to decide this? Of course. Doherty eyed him again. And regardless of his possibly insincere words, since the other party was a guest, finding topics to talk about was normal. Thinking for a moment, he resumed speaking, "As for this matter, Hall of Justice has not yet determined a stance, it requires further discussion." Not stating a position at this time already represented his view. It was understandable, considering the 5 members of the upper house, if there wasn't direct inclusion but a discussion in the middle, it likely meant that entrance would be difficult. Not to mention the council vote, just one veto right of the 5 members of the upper house was enough to prevent Lyss City from getting in. Who would willingly keep dividing out their power? Fang Hao didn't beat around the bush and directly said, "Leader Doherty, just speak frankly, what contribution to Hall of Justice would need to be made for the council to fulfill its promise?" Doherty frowned. His words carried an implication of mocking him for not keeping promises. The position that whoever resolved the undead issue would enter the upper house was his own promise. And now this turn of events, indeed, could infuriate anyone. But what he had said was about nomination to the upper house, not direct entry. Your contribution to Hall of Justice? You're young, with quite the audacity. Doherty leaned back, somewhat amused. Chapter 978. 10 Dwarf Windpipe Cannons. What do you mean? Doherty frowned. I have 10 dwarf 5-pipe organs here, with a market price of 50 million warfire coins in the Trade Alliance, Fang Hao said calmly. Doherty's frown deepened as he stared seriously at Fang Hao's face, trying to figure out if he was joking with him. The dwarf organ cannons weren't just a matter of having the money, as dwarfs typically didn't sell them to outsiders. Even in 8 Peaks Mountain where windpipe cannons were available, given the relationship of allies between humans and dwarfs, they could only purchase regular cannons. Windpipe cannons weren't available for sale. Only at the Trade Alliance auction where each power must supply valuable items would dwarfs sell a limited number of organ cannons. And as soon as they were available, they were divided up by the various powers. Could he really produce them? And 10 of them? If he had them, why not place them in Lyss City? In several investigations, there had been no information about organ cannons being placed in Lyss City. This is no place for jokes, Doherty reminded. Fang Hao continued, I obtained them at the Trade Alliance's spring auction. How about it? If you agree to Lyss City entering the upper house, I will gift these 10 to the Hall of Justice. He mentioned the Hall of Justice, not the council. It was clear he was trying to bribe Doherty. Ha! You think I would believe that you can produce 10 organ cannons? Doherty asked tentatively. Ah! Leader Doherty, you see, you're thinking too small. It's just organ cannons, not something extraordinary. Were it not for the fact that the Hall of Justice lacks them, I'd have thought to gift a few to Queen Anastasia instead. Still, the same goes if you agree, these 10 are yours, and I'll have the transmigrator handle the transaction directly, Fang Hao said again. His dealings with the lizardmen were also based on mutual interests. Naturally, he wouldn't really gift any organ cannons. It was just a statement to raise his own value. Anastasia? Which queen? Doherty asked coldly. The human clan calls them lizardmen. Queen Anastasia of the Holy Dynasty, Fang Hao replied. You know them. Indeed, I've had several collaborations with the lizardmen, and our relationship is quite close. Fang Hao picked up a teacup, glanced at it to ensure it had no negative attributes, and took a sip to moisten his throat. Doherty squinted his eyes, finding Fang Hao more and more inscrutable. At first, whether it was news from the council or what his own wife had told him, Fang Hao was just a good-looking, smooth-faced young man supported by Rebecca. But now, it seemed Fang Hao was far from as simple as the rumors suggested. After thinking it over, Doherty said, the Hall of Justice agrees, but that doesn't mean the other 4 will also agree. Fang Hao nodded. Leader Doherty, you needn't worry about that. I will naturally discuss it with the other 4 families. Just represent the Hall of Justice and cast your vote in favor. Doherty fell silent again. 50 million warfire coins to buy his vote. Truly a significant sum, enough to rebuild an entire district from the ground up. After a brief silence, Fang Hao had finished his cup of tea with soft sipping sounds. Then Doherty finally spoke, I can tentatively agree to your proposition, but I still need to discuss it internally at the Hall of Justice. I'll give you an answer in a few days. That's acceptable. Fang Hao nodded blandly. After that, the two did not discuss the council further. Doherty beat around the bush, inquiring about the location of Fang Hao's territory, how he got the qualifications to participate in the General Alliance auction, and other issues. Fang Hao was evasive where he could be, and where he couldn't, he simply said Rebecca didn't allow him to talk about it. Suddenly, he reverted to the image of the young man financially supported by his wife. In a room on the 2nd floor. The lighting was soft, with a gentle fragrance wafting through the air. In front of an elaborately designed dressing table, Olivia was wrapped in a black silk nightgown. Rebecca stood by her side, teaching her how to use the makeup products she had sent. So, how is your young husband? Olivia asked softly. What do you mean? Olivia smiled slightly. How is he in that regard? Is he good? Rebecca's cheeks reddened as she glared at her. I don't understand what you're saying. Oh, come on. Tell me. He looks so delicate and soft, and not very strong. Don't tell me you tire him out. Olivia teased as she pinched Rebecca's waist. Rebecca turned and retorted, my man is naturally capable and well-proportioned, not built like a gorilla. Then tell me, how long can he last? Rebecca held up one finger. An hour? That's average. Continuously. Chapter 979. Olivia glanced sidelong. Her husband was a warrior-class hero, whose physical condition had surpassed that of an ordinary person. One could only say he was somewhat more formidable than the husbands mentioned by the other ladies. Who would dare use the term always to describe it? Young and tender. She only thought that Rebecca was looking out for her young husband's face. Humph, it seems you really like him, you even take care of his face when we're together. I'm getting a bit jealous, Olivia said, feigning anger. Rebecca seriously said, what I'm saying is true. That must be from your tossing and turning all night, no wonder he looks all thin, Olivia said, pinching her buttocks. Rebecca dodged by swaying her waist. You're the one, you're becoming more and more like those ladies, always talking about these matters. You're the one. The two women frolicked in the room for a while. Fang Hao's voice came from outside the door. Rebecca, it's getting late, let's not disturb Lady Olivia's rest any longer. The romping in the room paused. Okay, coming out now, Rebecca called out. Then, she whispered in Olivia's ear, I'm going back now, this outfit will absolutely mesmerize Doherty to death. Olivia's cheeks flushed. She had changed into evening attire and stockings and put on fine makeup. Naturally, it was for her husband to see. Having Rebecca directly pointed out still left her somewhat embarrassed. "Oh, what are you talking about? All right, I'm going back, you don't need to come out." Having said that, she opened the door and stepped out. Linking her arm through Fang Hao's, they walked out together. They got into the carriage and started heading back to their residence. Rebecca, very deliberately, sat on the man's lap, her arm around his back. Suddenly, a wave of her scent filled the air inside the carriage. Who knows what the two women had discussed in the room? After coming out, her cheeks were rosy, her eyes were dewy, and her voluptuous body radiated allure from every angle. Fang Hao wrapped his arms around her slender waist and slightly lifted the hem to a gap. He reached under the thin fabric. Soft, smooth, and full of elasticity. "What's this? You're so passionate," Fang Hao whispered near her ear. If he didn't know that Rebecca and Olivia had a legitimate friendship, he would have suspected that they had played some little games during this time. Rebecca exhaled gently and spoke softly, "No, I just missed you." "Missed what?" Rebecca rolled her eyes and gave a light slap. "Did you talk with Doherty?" Rebecca whispered. "I did, from the attitude he showed when we first started talking, he doesn't plan to let us enter the upper house." "The previous nomination must really have been just a decoy," Fang Hao said plainly. From the very beginning of their conversation, even Doherty had no intention of letting them enter the council. So, Rebecca's efforts to facilitate the alliance with the Blood Clan turned out to be in vain. Though an alliance between the Blood Clan and the Federation alliance was already in the plans. But being misled by the council's empty promises, he still felt somewhat uneasy. Hearing Fang Hao say Doherty's attitude was bad, Rebecca immediately became anxious. "He doesn't agree." Fang Hao shook his head and continued, "He didn't explicitly disagree, I promised to supply the Hall of Justice with 10 pipe organs, and he said he would temporarily agree with us, and discuss it internally when the time comes." "Dwarf pipe organs? How much are they worth?" Rebecca knew a bit about weaponry, and the dwarf pipe organs were quite famous. Fang Hao reached inside her clothes, spread his fingers, and pinched, 50 million. Rebecca's eyes widened, "Are you crazy? 50 million for him?" 50 million was not a small amount. It would take Lyss City several years to come up with that kind of money. Moreover, this was just the first negotiation, and already 50 million, what about the other 4? The upper house was over, but the lower house still had voting. This spending had no end in sight. Fang Hao smiled slightly and said, "Well, preemptive promises are just like his promise to let us into the upper house," then came a vote for discussion later. "Agree first, talk through them all and see how the situation goes. If it doesn't work, we'll just play dumb and not give anything. Then you can just say I'm a pretty face who knows nothing and talks nonsense." Rebecca looked at Fang Hao somewhat surprised. This was truly fearless, and it was the first time someone from the lower house had tried to trick the upper house. But then she thought about it and felt it was quite normal. With Fang Hao's current strength, Doherty wasn't much to worry about. Testing and bargaining with each other were quite normal. Okay, since you've already promised, I'll listen to you," Rebecca twisted slightly and continued, "I've already booked an appointment with the Archbishop, you go talk to him before tomorrow noon." "The church?" Fang Hao looked thoughtful. From previous experiences, it was clear the church couldn't detect his allegiance. And it seemed the Archbishop had some bias against Rebecca. Wearing the light feather short sword, he wasn't afraid of the church's interrogation. Even the church wouldn't dare to detain him outright, as Silver Wing City was under the control of the Hall of Justice. Bringing Dimitrija along, who possessed the ancient blessing, he was also unaffected by external influences. Chapter 980. By then, talk to the Archbishop. Test the church's attitude. It's just about spending some money, isn't it? After contemplating, he nodded in agreement, "All right, I'll go see what the church's stance is tomorrow." Yes, the most important things are the attitudes of the Hall of Justice and the church. If they agree, we'll move on to the next step. Okay. Oh, which members of the lower house are you planning to persuade? Fang Hao continued to ask. Rebecca thought for a moment and said, "The most important is the Mage Association. Although it is not a member of the upper house, its influence is even greater than that of the 3 city lords of the upper house. If the upper house passes it, we will have to find a way to convince the Mage Association and the representatives of the Workers' Association, as well as the representatives of the Alchemy Association." The carriage moved through the night, the nightstones gently swaying. Rebecca broadly outlined all the ideas she could think of. But the members of the lower house were many and complex. When it came to discussions, they could only focus on a few critical ones. It wasn't about discussing with all of them, after all. Finally, after a bumpy ride, the carriage returned to their residence. Rebecca quickly straightened her clothes and was the first to step out of the carriage. Fang Hao followed her out and they walked toward the room together. Elsewhere, on the soft couch, Olivia, still in her gorgeous makeup, was dressed in a black gauze skirt, her curves elegant and exuding mature beauty. She kicked her husband beside her in annoyance. Is this all you're capable of? I'm embarrassed to speak of it. Doherty stretched out his long arm, wrapped her in his embrace, and said, I'm a bit tired, otherwise, my performance would be much better than this. Humph. You can't even compare to Rebecca's young husband. All those muscles you've trained are like a gorilla, Olivia scoffed. Doherty was taken aback, then looked at his wife with a peculiar expression. He was about to ask how she knew whether that young husband was impressive or not when he heard his wife say, Rebecca told me her husband can last much longer than you. Ah, you women always talk about these things when you're together. Obviously, it's an exaggeration, and you bring it up too, Doherty said immediately. Olivia kicked him again and didn't pursue the matter further. Continuing on, she said, You talked to Fang Hao, what do you think of him? Doherty was silent for a moment before saying, This man is no small-time husband, he's much more impressive than you think. Ah? What do you mean? Olivia's interest piqued, she propped her arm under her head and looked at him. Olivia and Rebecca were close, and she would find out from Rebecca eventually even if she herself didn't speak. So he started saying, Your so-called young husband offered me 10 organ guns on the spot. Do you think Rebecca can manage that? Rebecca was indeed a bold and capable woman, but she couldn't offer 10 organ guns. 10 cannons, what's so special about that? Maybe Rebecca just told him to say so. Doherty shook his head, 10 organ guns, 50 million warfire coins, and even with money, they can't be bought just like that. Can Rebecca afford that much money? What? 50 million? Warfire coins? Olivia exclaimed in surprise. So wealthy? Hearing this news, Olivia was even more astonished than Doherty. She had a very good relationship with Rebecca. In private, they were friends who could talk about anything and everything. But she truly thought that Rebecca had grown tired of her past life and had taken a young man she liked under her wing. Now it seemed, this young man was not as simple as she had imagined. No wonder Rebecca, despite her age, acted like a young bride. So, this person is not some young husband being taken care of. The room fell quiet for a while. Olivia then continued, Did you agree to him? I've temporarily agreed, but we still need to discuss it further, Doherty said. All right. Without speaking further, the two embraced each other and fell asleep. Help them renovate the temple? That's not a good idea. In the early morning, as they both dressed, they discussed what conditions they should put forth to get the church to agree to the Senate's nomination. Rebecca, brushing away the other's outstretched hand, said, A common method used by the nobles is to donate to and refurbish temples in various places. That's not good, Fang Hao shook his head, that would expand the church's influence, which would seriously impact our future development. Based on the information they had received, faith was also an important resource. Even wars over the ownership of faith might arise. He had already taken note of the power of faith. If they renovated the temple, thus broadening the church's influence, they would also increase the public's adoration for the church. This would have far more serious implications than providing some equipment that would become unusable after a year or two. After listening, Rebecca felt what he was saying seemed to make sense. Then what do you plan to do? Rebecca asked as she continued dressing. That will depend on the attitude of the Archbishop. Ideally, we would provide some clothing and items, but funding the repair of churches and temples is out of the question, Fang Hao mused and then said. But with just that, the church is unlikely to agree. After all, there are plenty of people offering them clothing and equipment, Rebecca remarked. Then provide some armor. Doesn't the church have a nightly army of the temple? Give them armor. Armor was even better, he could mass produce it. Of course, he wasn't afraid of the church getting their hands on the equipment and posing a threat. The United Army couldn't even defeat Otis, let alone him. All right, you decide, Rebecca said, putting on her coat. The two hurriedly left the room. After having breakfast, Rebecca then went out in the carriage to find Olivia and visit the two council members together. Fang Hao wasn't in such a hurry, he still had some time before he had to meet with the Archbishop. Archbishop, Rebecca is debauched and incompetent, and Lyss city has many issues. If she enters the Senate, it would pose a danger to the entire Federation, said Grote, the councillor of the Commerce Chamber, leaning forward with his waist bent, explaining the purpose of his visit. Though his voice was soft, his tone was somewhat hurried, clearly unrest stirring within him. Archbishop Milton, holding his staff, asked, "What is the House of Commons' stance on this matter?" "Hey?" Grote was startled, not expecting the Archbishop's first question to be about the House of Commons. Since when was the attitude of the House of Commons so important? Though puzzled, he still said with a smile, "Last night, I met with a few council members with whom I share a good relationship, and their thoughts align with mine." Rebecca's unique status, added to the fact that Lyss city is quite ordinary. If she were to enter the Senate, it would surely stir dissatisfaction among the city lords of other cities. That was the rhetoric, but when considering Rebecca's status and the development potential of Lyss city, she really shouldn't be the one to enter the Senate. But it was indeed Rebecca who had solved the undead crisis, Dorothy had promised so herself, on the spot. "During this time, have you investigated Lyss city? Any news?" asked the Archbishop. Grote, bending even lower, replied, "Not yet, Lyss city has been very tight-lipped recently, there's no news coming back." The Archbishop nodded and after some thought continued, "What do you know about Rebecca's husband?" Grote thought for a moment and firmly said, "A transmigrator with decent development, nothing else special about him. He helped Rebecca deal with the faceless ones before, they met through that a powerless pretty boy." The Archbishop nodded again but didn't say anything. This matched the information he had. "All right, you can go back now. If I need you for anything, I will have someone notify you," said the Archbishop. Grote wanted to speak up, to implore the Archbishop to definitely not agree. But the words didn't come out, despite several attempts. In the end, he could only give a respectful bow and withdraw. Once the room was quiet again, the Archbishop asked someone nearby, "When is Fang Hao scheduled to come over?" "Archbishop, there's about an hour left," the attendant replied respectfully. The Archbishop stood up and left the room, heading to another room. Chapter 981. Church. At the opulent Grand Hall, the Archbishop and several bishops were seated at the highest positions at the top of the hall. Looking down from above, they watched the young transmigrator below. Fang Hao had thought it would be a meeting similar to the one with Dorothy. But he hadn't expected the church to pull such a move. It seemed more like a trial. Fang Hao looked around at everyone present, and his gaze finally settled on Archbishop Milton. He clasped his fists and said, "I have seen the Archbishop, and the bishops." His voice was not loud, but it echoed calmly through the hall. The bishops started discussing fervently. Faintly, some comments could be heard. Rebecca actually let him come over. It was really blunt, devoid of the usual niceties and cover-ups among nobility. Directly a trade of money. This was not something that could be openly discussed. Archbishop looked down and paused momentarily because this wasn't sticking to the script. Then he said, "Is this the condition that Rebecca had you propose?" "You could say that. Why didn't Rebecca come to talk to us herself, instead sending you?" a bishop asked. Fang Hao replied, "Rebecca was originally going to come, but then Lady Olivia called her away at the last minute, hence she had me come to explain the situation to the Archbishop and the bishops. From what I understand, Lyss city does not have the capacity to produce so many garments and armor," another bishop spoke up. Fang Hao responded, "You need not worry about that, sirs. If I have promised it, I will deliver. The Church, being the leader of the human federation, I dare not lie to the Church." "Does Rebecca really consider herself capable of being a representative in the upper Senate?" another bishop said. "Lyss city has been developing well, and Rebecca has been striving to resolve the difficulties for the Federation. If she sits in the upper Senate, she will naturally respond actively to the Council's decisions. Rebecca's loyalty to humanity, how can you assure us of that?" The bishops asked one by one, and Fang Hao answered calmly. No matter the response, he tried to maintain a composed demeanor. These questions were merely formalities, what mattered was whether the benefits could sway the Church. In face of the Church, one could see how much friendlier Dorothy's issue had been. After all had spoken, no bishop stood up to ask further questions. Fang Hao was also quite parched from talking. Lead to the church. Really? Are they providing so many armors? And vicar robes? Isn't he just bluffing on this side? Probably, he plans to use the transmigrator's manufacturing, but this quantity would also be challenging. Chapter 982. The Archbishop glanced to the side. Immediately, another bishop spoke up loudly, whether it's Rebecca or Lyss City, both are somewhat too demanding, the church also faces a great deal of pressure. Fang Hao gave him a look, this is the largest quantity I can offer, and even then I need to deliver it to the church in batches. If this still doesn't demonstrate our sincerity, then I truly have no other way. It was clear that the other party wanted more. But greed has no end. Oh, years, and the rest to be completed in the third year, of course, provided that Lyss City can enter the upper senate, Fang Hao continued. 3,000 each year, he would only need to spend the materials for 30 pieces of equipment to get by. And besides, it might be a different story next year. It also served to prolong the issue. Inside the church hall, the archbishop and the bishops hadn't left. This husband of Rebecca does have some guts, he has a strong foundation in talking with us, and his thoughts are very clear. Yes, and he's not as useless as rumors suggested. Not just that, he seems even more composed than those from the big families. How he fares, we'll discuss later. Should we accept this large quantity of armor? 10,000 sets is indeed not a small number, and could generate considerable funds through the trade alliance. 3 years' time is also acceptable. Prior to Fang Hao's arrival, they had also engaged in preliminary discussions. After all, visiting the church, it's quite easy to guess that it's related to the matters of the upper senate. However, the outcome of the discussion was quite different from the conclusion. The topic shifted, seemingly everyone willing to accept this batch of armor. From the highest position, the archbishop once more tapped the floor with his cane. Do you think these 10,000 pieces of armor can be exchanged for our vote? There was a moment of silence. Someone spoke up, I think it's possible, as the upper senate is still dominated by the Hall of Justice and the church, adding Rebecca won't have a big impact. I think so too. Agreed. Agreed. In the eastern borders of the Dreamy Forest. Within 3 years, the Dreamy Forest needs to pay Furious Lion City 500,000 warfire coins, 30,000 strong male slaves, 50,000 beast skins, 20,000 units of ore. In the center of the border, a flat open area. A burly orc, with hair as fluffy as a lion's, stood. He was reading loudly from the beastskin with one foot on a chair. The golden sunlight made the thin beastskin almost translucent, revealing the figures of small men, gold coins, daggers, and other patterns etched on it. There wasn't a single word, all represented by patterns. These terms were less like negotiation and more like a victorious party demanding reparations from a losing force. The fairy clan would agree to none of these. If it wasn't for the fact that the Dreamy Forest had become Fang Hao's territory, the war might still be ongoing. Continuing until one side utterly failed. Angia glanced at the furious lion orc opposite and asked, Are you done? Chapter 983. That's it, those are the terms, the furious lion orc declared. Okay, that all seems reasonable. I can speak for the fairy clan and agree to this, Angia said outright. Oh, his feet, roaring with anger. Both sides' forces quickly came to their senses, drew their weapons, and charged forward. In the blink of an eye, they were all embroiled in battle. In the midst of the team, Angia and Chiral were in the throng, throwing punches and swings of their swords, striking down their enemies. At that moment, suddenly, an orc shouted, Look, what is that? The Dragon Clan, so many from the Dragon Clan. It's the Undead's dragons, made all of bones. Many looked up. They saw several massive bone dragons approaching rapidly from behind the fairy clan. It was the first time the orcs of Furious Lion City had seen the form of a dragon, even if it was a bone dragon clad in iron armor. Whoosh whoosh. Several whooshing sounds filled the sky. The bone dragons swept overhead, lowering their altitude as they passed over the Furious Lion clan, unleashing beams of black energy. The beams swept through the opposing camp. Whole swathes of undead began shedding flesh in the dragon's breaths, their bones scattering across the ground. Damn it, it's the undead. Run! Flee, they're the undead. In an instant, the Furious Lion clan's ranks began to dissolve into chaos. Orc soldiers were running helter-skelter, ducking and weaving, some even charging directly into the fairy clan's lines. The furious lion orc, with a grim face, stood his ground and barked out orders loudly. Moments later, Angia and the fairy Chiral charged at him. After a series of frenzied punches, they shut the furious lion orc up. Angia climbed onto a wooden table, surveyed the situation of the entire area, and shouted her command, "Pursue and don't spare a single one. For our fallen fairy clan brethren, take vengeance now." With that, she charged towards a fleeing orc. The fairy clan soldiers behind her also roared as they chased down the fleeing orcs. Due to their special abilities, the fairy clan moved far quicker than orcs in woodland, quickly catching up to them and ensuing in a fierce skirmish. Cries of battle and screams of agony filled the entire area. In the rear area, in the dungeon, Angia, with the satchel slung over her shoulder and hands behind her back, walked down into the dungeon. There was only one prisoner, a furious lion orc. Hearing the footsteps, the furious lion orc, covered in wounds and brimming with hatred, glared at her. But Angia just smiled slightly. "Ifrit, don't you recognize me? When we were kids, I used to beat you up." Chapter 984. "Ifrit, don't you recognize me? When we were kids, I used to beat you up," the voice of the white-haired beast-ear girl came. The crouched furious lion orc was startled, then raised his head again to seriously look at the other party. Slightly dark skin, white short hair. These features. Ifrit tried hard to remember, comparing this appearance to people he knew from his childhood. It felt like there was such an orc girl, but the memory was too vague. He just couldn't recall who she was. Are you also from Furious Lion City?" Ifrit, enduring the pain, gritted his teeth and asked. If they knew each other as children, then she must also be from the Furious Lion City. Angia thought for a moment, then said, "You could say that." Hearing this reply, Ifrit's expression immediately turned ferocious as he roared, "You traitor! You actually helped fairies, you've killed so many people from Furious Lion City, you traitor to the orcs!" Blood flowed down the wounds, and the sunken chest emitted crackling sounds of bones rubbing against each other with his roar. But none of these could stop Ifrit from cursing at the traitor before him. Since she came from the Furious Lion City and had even collaborated with the fairy clan to kill nearly 10,000 orc warriors. Only he had not died yet. Angia flicked her little finger, then ear, and sat down outside the iron cage. She said, "Ha! Your brain really hasn't disappointed me. It's fine that you don't remember me. When Furious Lion City falls, you'll know who I am. You're crazy, you're a criminal of the orcs, and you will not die a good death," Ifrit cursed loudly. "Back then, when you drove me out of the city, barring any village from taking me in, wanting to watch me freeze to death, starve to death, and have my body eaten by wild beasts, did you ever think of yourselves as the criminals?" Angia spoke coldly. Ifrit was startled, his brows suddenly furrowed. The next second, his pupil shrank. "You're the one from the Fighting Tooth clan." His voice grew louder as he shouted, "You're that child from the Fighting Tooth clan, you're actually still alive." Angia gave him a cold look without answering and turned to walk away. When she reached the door, she said to the guards outside, "Keep a close watch on him, give him a couple of slashes occasionally. The furious lion kind are tough, don't let him escape." "Yes." The guard answered. A chill ran through Ifrit's heart yet again. Exiting the church, Fang Hao did not immediately return, but had the carriage turn a corner. Following the streets, he headed for the West City area. The carriage moved along, reaching its destination about half an hour later. The Alchemists Association of the 100 Cities Federation. The Alchemists Association consisted of two parts: the front courtyard hall and the ivory tower. The front courtyard was responsible for purchasing alchemy materials and selling potions. It was where merchants with materials and nearby farmers growing alchemical plants sold to the association, and where people from the city bought potions. It served as a separate trading platform. The ivory tower, located at the back, was a white spire that tapered upward from a broad base, shaped like an elephant's tusk, and hence its name. It was where the alchemists created their potions. Aside from alchemists or special personnel, it was not open to the public. Having the coachman wait on the side, Fang Hao entered the association's main hall with Dimitrija. The front courtyard was still bustling. There were elegantly dressed nobles, as well as commoners carrying herb loads selling medicinal herbs. He walked straight to the reception area where a female clerk gave him a plain look, then glanced at the lizardman behind him. She asked, "What do you need?" Her attitude was somewhat indifferent. My name is Fang Hao, the city lord of Lyss City. I'd like to see if your association's president is available for a talk, said Fang Hao to minimize trouble by introducing himself. According to the plan, Rebecca should have arranged for someone to make an appointment with the president of the Alchemists Association in advance. But today's church meeting ended earlier, and he had nothing else to do if he went back. So he had the carriage bring him straight here. Even if he couldn't see the president of the Alchemists Association, he could purchase some potions. Hearing that Fang Hao stated he was the city lord, the female clerk looked surprised. After examining him from head to toe, her demeanor shifted from indifferent to saying, "Please wait a moment, I'll go inquire." Having said that, she hurriedly went to the back, returning shortly after. "My lord, this way please. The president invites you over," said the clerk respectfully. Fang Hao nodded, "Thank you." She led the way, swaying her hips, toward the back courtyard. They didn't enter the ivory tower, but she led him to the third floor of a central building, in front of a room. After lightly knocking on the door, an elderly voice came from inside, "Come in." The clerk opened the door, indicating Fang Hao could enter. Entering the room, the interior came into view. A desk with several pieces of parchment covered in research notes scattered on it, and a few glass vessels placed beside it. The four walls were lined with bookshelves, holding neatly arranged books. "President, I hope it's not a bother to come uninvited," Fang Hao said with a smile. Behind the desk was an old man. Dressed in a dark robe, his hair somewhat disheveled. "Haha, City Lord Fang Hao, just call me Kenneth. What brings you here to see me this time?" President Kenneth asked. Fang Hao might not be very famous, but being Rebecca's husband was widely known in certain circles. "I plan to place an order for a batch of potions here, and I want to set up a long-term cooperation," Fang Hao said as he sat down, getting straight to the point. Chapter 985. Kenneth nodded, not feeling too surprised. "Ordering potions isn't a big deal. I'll arrange for someone to take you to the front yard to handle it," Kenneth said softly, stroking his beard. "I was wondering if there could be a discount for a large order." As they talked, the door opened again. An attendant brought 2 cups of hot tea to them. "Oh? How much is a large amount?" Kenneth asked as he picked up his cup and blew on it. There were plenty of city lords who came to order potions. But alchemical potions were still luxury items, costing dozens to hundreds of warfire coins per bottle, not something ordinary people could afford. Thus, a city's purchase would only suffice for some family members or the local nobility. Orders of 200 to 300 bottles were already considered large customers. The Alchemist Association mainly sold its potions through the trade alliance. Besides, what purchasing power could a fringe city like Lyss City have? Since the order covers a variety of products, it's difficult to give an exact number, but after discussing with Rebecca, we're prepared to start with a purchase of 1 million warfire coins worth of potions. Puh! Fang Hao had only said half of it when Kenneth spouted his tea out. 1 million warfire coins? Was he planning to distribute potions like water to the residents of Lyss City? Kenneth coughed twice and asked, "Are you joking?" "No, why? Does the chairman have any difficulties?" Fang Hao asked earnestly. Fang Hao indeed intended to purchase that many potions. Humans' potions were effective for other species of living creatures as well. However, there was no way for the orcs and trolls within his territory to obtain human potions. Now, his territory was planning to set up an internal trade network, allowing the special products of all species to circulate, and he also intended to sell potions to the orcs, trolls, as well as transmigrators. It was a surefire moneymaker that would enhance the variety and prestige of items. Moreover, in his territory, many orcs were stuck at the 8th or 9th rank, and he planned to utilize potions to push these people up in rank, turning them all into heroes. Cough, cough. I don't have any difficulties, but can Lyss City really use that many potions? Kenneth remarked while wiping the droplets from his beard. Fang Hao thought for a moment and gave an explanation, "You don't have to worry about the use, Kenneth. Moreover, 1 million is just the initial investment. We will also decide whether to increase the order amount based on the effects, and we will continue to make purchases every year." Kenneth still frowned, giving Fang Hao a strange look. He reminded him, "City Lord Fang Hao, the association does not allow credit purchases." "Oh, money isn't a problem," Fang Hao said and pulled out stack after stack of warfire cards with large amounts from his chest. goodness, even Kenneth was stunned. Carrying so much money with him? Now Kenneth also believed that Lyss City indeed had the financial strength. As a commercial entity, naturally, Kenneth would not refuse a client with strong financial power seeking cooperation. After all, in the trade alliance, there were no shortage of alchemist institutions. Haha, good. Then, Lord City Lord, give me your order and I'll arrange for staff to prioritize the preparation for you. Whatever potions we lack, we'll arrange for production, Kenneth said with pleasure. No rush. How much discount can you give me? As you know, I have to report back to Rebecca, said Fang Hao with a helpless expression. Owen pondered for a moment and replied, how about a discount of 20%? That's already the discount that the major families can get. The concept of percentage discounts was also something introduced by transmigrators. Chinatown in Silver Wing City developed rapidly and became a famous commercial street in the city. All sorts of peculiar words and sales methods also spread throughout the city. Discounts, card issues, grand commercial rewards. The original inhabitants were stunned, never having seen such things before. I'll get more than that if I go to the trade alliance. Oh? So, City Lord, what do you think would be a fairer price? Kenneth continued to ask. 50% off. City Lord, you really have a sense of humor. That price is too low, let's say 30% off, no less, Kenneth said after some thought. 50%. After calculating again, Kenneth said, we can only do 30% off. If you're buying magic power or life potions, we can further give you a discount up to 40%. You won't be able to find any lower than 30% even if you go to the trade alliance. Seeing Kenneth insist, Fang Hao knew he couldn't push any further. Pretending to think it over, he said, that's not out of the question, but I need one more condition. Oh? Please, speak. You must have heard about Lyss City's attempt to enter the upper council, Kenneth. At the council, I hope the Alchemists Association can support us, Fang Hao expressed his second objective. This request did not surprise Kenneth at all. In fact, he had guessed this purpose might come up when he arrived. But now Fang Hao was a major client of the Alchemist Association, and Kenneth wasn't able to disrupt their relationship. After a moment of contemplation, he replied, that's possible. I'll pass on the word. When can you place the order for the potions? Fang Hao also showed a smile, within 3 days, I'll have someone send over the order and a portion of the prepayment, and then you can start preparing the goods. Kenneth nodded, indicating his agreement. 3 days, before the council meeting, there wouldn't be any worry that Fang Hao was trying to deceive him. Chapter 986. All right, since that's the case, I'll be heading back first, Fang Hao stood up. Yes, City Lord, have a safe journey. The female clerk outside the door once again opened the door and, with a twist of her waist, sent the two off. Upon leaving the association building, Fang Hao looked back at the towering ivory tower. Potions, in this world, held a very important status. Beyond restoring life and magic power, there were also those that increased training experience and physical capabilities. All were very practical potions. Previously, he had thought of cultivating a group of alchemists for himself. But in his search, he had only come into contact with a single demon alchemist, nowhere near enough to form a scale. He could only order now from the association, and his own alchemists, he would train slowly. After exiting the front hall, he boarded the carriage and returned to his residence. 5 in the afternoon. Under the escort of several Lionheart knights, the carriage slowly approached the courtyard. Rebecca, wearing a blue dress, stepped down from the carriage. Looking up, she caught sight of Fang Hao, who was leaning out from upstairs, waving to her. She smiled and quickly ascended the stairs. The room's door opened, and Rebecca, holding up the hem of her dress, entered. Through the lifted hem, a pair of exquisite shoes and the black silk stockings wrapping her shapely calves were visible. Apparently, the silk stockings were his most successful product. Women, they all loved these stockings. The skeleton tailor had argued with him for quite some time because the stockings didn't retain warmth well and provided no defense. Now, it seemed, he had the better vision. How come you were out the whole day? Fang Hao asked. Rebecca sat on the bed somewhat wearily, propping up her body with her arms. Olivia took me to see several council members in a row. Without her clout, I doubt they would have met with me, she replied. Were the talks all right? Fang Hao smiled slightly, sat beside her, and lifted her black silk-clad beautiful legs onto his knees. He lifted her skirt and started to massage her legs. She was his wife, after all, he felt a certain duty to care for her. Having her man help with her legs made Rebecca blush with a mix of shyness and pleasure. Her cheeks reddening, she said, "It went pretty well, quite pleasantly, in fact. There should be some who will stand on our side when the time comes." She paused before asking, "How about your side? The Archbishop didn't give you a hard time, did he?" "I wouldn't say a hard time, but it was indeed a bit more troublesome than at Doherty's," he answered. "What did they all say?" "Some questioned your identity, said Lyss City wasn't qualified enough basically, every bishop asked me once." Hearing this, Rebecca grew anxious again. The church had always been hostile toward her, she could only imagine the tension being greater than what she heard. "So, what happened in the end?" "The church also said they would consider it and didn't outright reject our proposal." "What did you promise them?" "It wasn't that organ cannon again, was it?" "Of course not. I promised them 5,000 acolyte robes and 10,000 sets of armor." 10,000? Are you insane? That's so much." "No, I promised them over 3 years. The first year only 3,000 sets. We'll see if they agree, and then we'll talk about getting into the upper chamber. It seems like we've lost quite a bit this way." "Not really, as long as we get into the upper chamber, everything we give today will come back with interest. It's just an initial investment." As they spoke, Fang Hao undid the ornamental copper fasteners on the stockings, lifted her right leg, and gently pulled down, sliding off the black garter-style stockings, revealing her smooth, shapely thighs. "What are you doing?" Rebecca abruptly sat up, drawing her legs in, slapping him in displeasure. "We're about to eat, why are you still wearing that? Your concern is touching." "Ah, we're an old married couple, there's nothing to be shy about." He pulled her legs back onto his knees. Continuing, Fang Hao said, "I went to the Alchemist Association this afternoon and met with President Kenneth." "Oh? And how did it go?" Rebecca's attention was successfully diverted. "I placed an order worth $1 million with him, and he immediately agreed to support us." "You?" Rebecca didn't know what to say. Why does every matter get resolved with money? This wasn't the strategy she had prepared. "Relax, everything will go smoothly from here on," he reassured her. To the east of Dreamy Forest, a dense swarm of undead had already assembled, and under Engia's command, they began marching towards Furious Lion City. Chapter 987. Furious Lion City. Inside the city lord's hall, the lights were still bright. Atop the highest throne, sat an orc from the Furious Lion clan. The orc was not young, but his burly stature, like a lion's mane spread out, still gave an oppressive feeling as if facing a wild beast. Suppressing his anger, and continued, "The conditions we proposed this time, the fairy clan is very likely to reject. Their alliance with Tasco City has indeed increased their strength a bit." Furious Lion City's terms were tough even by their own admission. "Ted. We can't invade Dreamy Forest, but we can use this opportunity to take over Tasco City. I think, once Ifere returns, we can immediately gather our forces and attack Tasco City, and then force the fairy clan's territory by pressing from both Tasco and Furious Lion City to make them surrender." "That's a good idea. The war with the fairy clan has lasted for decades now, it's time to end it. Indeed, when the time comes, the resources inside Dreamy Forest will be enough to compensate for our losses. Men can be made slaves, and the women can also be sold to human cities to make a good amount of money." Everyone voiced their opinions one after another. They seemed assured of their victory over the fairy clan. Tempesta listened and nodded his head, feeling it was indeed feasible. Since they couldn't invade the forest where the fairies resided, they would first occupy Tasco City and squeeze the fairy clan's territory. Force them to surrender. Very well, let's settle on that and no need to discuss the upcoming negotiations any further. In the next few days, prepare to dispatch troops and attack Tasco City, Tempesta declared decisively. "Yes, Chief." Thump, thump, thump. Before the sound of voices had faded, a loud bell rang outside the room. Everyone was startled and looked at the door with puzzled faces. They knew it was an alarm bell, but the alarm bell of Furious Lion City had not rung for many years. Suddenly hearing it left everyone somewhat confused and bewildered. Soon after, a guard stumbled into the room. Shouting, "Massive numbers of the undead have appeared on the eastern side of the city. What? Tempesta suddenly stood up, his face drastically changing. An indefinable number of the undead are approaching from that direction, the guard repeated. Quick, gather the troops, prepare for defense. Having said that, he led a group of followers towards the door. As they stepped outside, in the sky ahead, they could see several massive figures approaching the city, and beams of black light rained down on the top of the city walls, turning the soldiers who had just assembled into mere skeletons. Bone dragons. It was indeed the undead. How could such a force be here? Meanwhile, elsewhere, at the border, Fort Santi. Today was the day the first batch of personnel was returning, and Li Rong was on the list. Dawn was just breaking. Chapter 988. Li Rong had already appeared outside her residence. She stood silently waiting, holding her belongings and standing next to the dark elf Morse. Before long, Water Mage Maple also came out with her belongings from a building. Where's the target point you've inscribed? Maple asked. My city. Then from there, you can return to Silverwing City in just an hour or two, Li Rong replied. After thinking for a moment, Maple nodded, all right, I'll inform my guards. After Maple and Li Rong used the teleportation scroll to return, their guards had to follow the returning caravan back. After giving a few instructions to her personal guard, she returned to Li Rong's side. Li Rong didn't delay and opened the scroll directly. A light enveloped the three of them, and in the next second, they vanished from the spot. City Lord, you've returned. Suddenly, voices of inquiry arose. Li Rong and her companions opened their eyes to see several residents of the city carrying tools and preparing to head out to work. Li Rong nodded slightly. Then, more and more residents and guards greeted Li Rong. And she responded to each of them in turn. After waiting for Morse and Maple to return to the city lord's mansion, she couldn't help but remark, there's no place like home. She took a hot bath and changed into noble attire. After breakfast, she immediately got into a carriage and rushed towards Silverwing City. Furious Lion City, the Great Hall. City Lord Pure Mane Lion King Tempesta was currently bound by the hands, kneeling in the center of the hall. Behind him, a myriad of orcs were also kneeling. There were city officials, commanders, and old orcs who were specifically summoned here. Hundreds of people in unison filled the hall as they kneeled. And at the top, a white-haired young girl dressed in leather armor, slinging a brown bag over her shoulder, sits on the city lord's throne, eating fruit and swinging her crossed legs. No matter how one looked, she appeared like an unruly young girl lacking discipline. Standing on either side behind the girl were a Tauren in shining gold and a fairy clad in bright silver armor. Hearing the cough behind her, the white-haired girl threw the fruit in her hand to the floor. Be taken over by us. You have two choices, surrender and you'll be assigned corresponding work afterward, or die. This is hardly a choice at all. The captive orcs fell silent. After a brief silence, a somewhat timid voice rose from among the captives, if we surrender, we really won't die. No need, do I have any need to lie to you? Angia responded. Then I surrender. Who dares to surrender, whoever does so will be treated as a betrayer of Furious Lion City and the entire family will be executed. At that moment, Tempesta roared loudly, scaring the orcs behind him so much that they all shuddered. Tempesta looked somewhat disheveled at this time. His body was covered with scars, his once lush mane matted with blood. His body was wrapped in heavy chains and thrown aside. During the battle, Angia and the others didn't engage him directly but instead used swarm tactics, exhausting him to his current state. When he was dragged out from the pile of bones, he looked extremely grievous. Hearing his roar, Angia's gaze shifted to him but she said nothing. Instead, her eyes remained on the orcs captive behind him, as she continued, one last chance, whoever wants to surrender may speak now. The orcs all glanced at Tempesta, badly wounded and securely bound, and finally said, I surrender. I also surrender, I am but a merchant. I too surrender. One after another, they declared their stance, and the majority chose to surrender. Angia nodded and continued, record all those who are willing to surrender, and for those who don't wish to surrender, unless they are heroes, take them out and kill them. Yes. A fairy soldier at her side nodded and accepted the order. They escorted out the group willing to surrender, as well as those who were not. Inside the hall, only Pure Mane Lion King Tempesta and a few members of the Furious Lion clan remained. Angia walked down, getting even closer to him, Tempesta, do you remember me? Tempesta glanced at her with hatred. You know me. That winter when I was 7, you ordered me to be ejected from the city. You haven't forgotten, have you? Angia reminded. Tempesta narrowed his eyes and looked more closely at the girl with slightly dark skin and white furry ears. When Old Mill was taken, he was very light. He hung on a mere breath, instructing her to go west, go south, even to the cities of humans, but never to return to Furious Lion City. The moment Angia was declared a hero in the Amassed training ground, that was when Old Mill breathed his last. Chapter 989. On the side. The members of the Furious Lion clan who overheard the conversation between the two also revealed surprised expressions. Nothing ever happened. An orange hero is enough to preside over a power, even war prisoners are usually recruited, not killed outright. Therefore, he believed that, setting aside his personal vendetta with Angia, the opposing leader would definitely want to recruit him. Angia scoffed, unfortunately, he's off to some meeting, I make the decisions here. Her gaze returned to the Furious Lion clan members, and Angia continued, out of regard for Old Mill, I'll give you one more chance to surrender, choose whether to live or die. There was hesitation again. Some members of the Furious Lion clan, who had just been willing to die rather than surrender, chose to give in. They had no intention of dying alongside Tempesta. Angia nodded. Chiral. Miss Angia, Chiral stepped forward. Have Tempesta, and those unwilling to surrender, killed, keep the heroes' bodies and take the ordinary ones back to be thrown into the conversion site, Angia commanded directly. Just as Chiral was about to accept the order, Bronze Bull stepped forward and hurriedly said, Angia, should we wait for the Lord to return? That's quite a number of people to kill. The number of people being killed among the prisoners clearly involved personal vendettas. No need to ask, I'll explain when he returns, you don't need to worry, Angia concluded, then looked at Chiral. Chiral, what are you waiting for? Kill them all. Yes, bring them all out, Chiral called out loudly. A large group of fairy clan guards rushed in, dragging the cursing orcs out. This group included the orange hero, Tempesta. For Chiral and these fairies, they were naturally eager to see these men executed. In the years of warfare that persisted, many fairies had died at the hands of the orcs from Furious Lion City. Now, to execute these men with their own hands was to avenge their fallen kin. Truth be told, Angia's decision to kill so many people, apart from revenge, also involved her own calculations. Tempesta was an orange hero, initially badly wounded by sheer numbers, and it would be a long time before Fang Hao returned. Should he seize any opportunity to retaliate, no one here would be his match. Furthermore, the Furious Lion clan held significant esteem within the city, failing to kill more to deter them. They might rally at his call, the city's orcs once again taking up arms, a precarious situation indeed. Rather than leaving a threat unaddressed, it was better to execute those who must be killed, ensuring even if they wished to rebel, they lacked the means. The rest would wait for Fang Hao's return. Apart from vengeance, leading the troops solo, one couldn't afford to be too lenient either. All the prisoners were taken out. Add latest chapters at Freehodnovlo only. The hall instantly became silent. Bronze Bull asked, Angia, what's next? You stay and take charge of the city lord's mansion, control the soldiers within the city, then call in the military forces from Tasco City, Angia instructed. Bronze Bull nodded, okay, should we inform the lord? Apart from promising benefits, who else would want to see you enter the upper senate? Fang Hao nodded, then said, it's fine, Li Rong said this chairman is her teacher, perhaps that relationship could help us get a bit closer. The ability to arrange a meeting with the chairman of the Mage Association was indeed thanks to Li Rong's connection. Chapter 990. Otherwise, there wouldn't even be a chance to schedule an appointment. Rebecca glared at him, beginning to doubt his relationship with Li Rong. By the way, what's the name of this association president? Grigor Ya, a fire elemental mage with great prestige in the city. Fang Hao frowned, feeling that this name sounded very familiar. The carriage proceeded on its way. It eventually stopped in front of the Mage Association. Guided by an attendant. In a study piled with all kinds of books, they met the mage Grigor Ya. In his 50s, wearing a dark red mage's robe with the symbol of the Mage Association on his chest, flames patterns could be seen around the chest and collar. Fire red hair showing a few strands of silver, but with eyes that were still sharp, exuding an aura of intimidation. Crimson Flame Demon Rider Grigor Ya, Orange Tier 3. Another orange tier hero. If the Archbishop is also the orange tier as he guessed, then Silver Wing City would indeed have 3 orange tier heroes stationed there. That sort of prestige wasn't low at all. President Grigor, he collected his thoughts and greeted with a smile. Take a seat. Grigor put the book he was holding to one side. At this moment, an attendant brought over pastries and hot tea. Grigor continued, I've heard about your matter from Li Rong. You hope that the Mage Association will cast its vote for you, right? Yes, President Grigor, I hope the association will cast this vote for us at the right time, Rebecca said. Actually, the association isn't keen on adding another person to the upper council, Grigor said bluntly. Rebecca's expression changed to an unnatural one in an instant. But she still said, Lyss City entering the upper council isn't detrimental to the association, and will remember the assistance provided to us. Grigor thought for a moment, then continued, after entering the upper council, what do you feel the Mage Association would gain? A lot, naturally. Firstly, an ally in the upper council, the proposals submitted by the association, we will fully support them, and I will, in terms of authority. Rebecca and Grigor began to discuss back and forth with each question and answer. Meanwhile, Fang Hao sat quietly to the side, not interfering with their discussion. He recalled in his mind where he had heard the name Grigor before. During a previous mission? Or in a broadcast? He had the name in his mind but couldn't remember. It was quite a while before Grigor spoke with an apologetic tone, Rebecca, I can't give a definite promise to cast this vote, it will have to depend on the situation at the scene. Rebecca looked helplessly at Fang Hao. Promises had been made, and a financial offensive had been suggested. Still, Grigor hadn't made a clear stance, and they were out of options. Everyone's stance was different. Perhaps, for the Mage Association, they really didn't want to see a new upper council member arise. Fang Hao nodded at Rebecca. Rebecca forced a smile and said, That's all right, then. We won't disturb you any longer. Take care, Grigor replied indifferently. The two of them stood up and left the Mage Association. After exiting the main gate, they boarded the carriage. Rebecca's smile turned to disappointment, another failure. We've done our best. If we really can't make it into the upper council, so be it. We can still develop well internally, Fang Hao consoled. You're both fire elemental mages, but why are you so different in temperament? She's too difficult to approach, Rebecca muttered. Fang Hao gave an awkward smile. It's not the same, he thought. We are candid with each other, naturally easy to approach. It's not strange for her not to agree since she hasn't met you more than twice. Suddenly, a thought struck Fang Hao. Ah! A fire elemental mage. He suddenly remembered where he had heard the name Grigor before. In the room next to the study. President Grigor, your decision is truly wise, praised Grote loudly beside her. Exactly. Her entry into the upper council wouldn't benefit the Federation whatsoever. Yes, I knew President would agree with our stance, added another. The other councillors nodded in agreement. Before Fang Hao's arrival, these people were already there. They came to discuss the same matter with Grigor, but their goal was the opposite, to persuade Grigor absolutely not to approve Rebecca's entry into the upper council. They were mid-discussion when Fang Hao and his companion arrived. Grigor, in the next study, received the two of them. Grote and his companions quietly overheard some of their conversation and knew that Grigor hadn't agreed to the request. Even though the conditions Rebecca offered were quite tempting for them as well. Grigor glanced at them and said, whether she can enter the upper council mainly depends on what the Big Five say. It's not much related to us, the lower council members. Compared to Rebecca, Grote and the councillors' families were more familiar with Grigor. The intertwining interests between nobles are complex and hard to unravel. They all reside in Silver Wing City and naturally interact at times. Internally, they were more inclined toward Grote's side rather than Rebecca's. I've heard a bit about that too. Rebecca has offered benefits to the Big Five of the upper council in exchange for their support, Grote stated. Oh? Has anyone agreed? Someone asked. Grote shook his head, it's hard to say. It seems that none of them have outright agreed, but they're all somewhat interested. Chapter 991. Really? What could Rebecca have that would sway the five giants? Money? Resources? What money could Lyss City have, a peripheral small city? A few people were discussing, and had Grigor not been present, even uglier things might have been said. After a while of chatting, Grote and others finally stood up and said, Chairwoman Grigor, we still need to talk with other legislators, we will not disturb you further. Grigor nodded, yes, go ahead. The group stood up and left. Once everyone had left, Grigor also stood up and walked outside. She had just reached the door when she saw an attendant of the association hurrying in. As soon as he saw Grigor, he spoke up, Chairwoman Grigor, this was sent by Lord Fang Hao, asking if you can confirm whether this is your item. With that, a small wooden box was presented to her. Grigor frowned slightly, feeling somewhat displeased. The other party still hadn't given up. This was an attempt at a bribe. Open it, Grigor commanded. The attendant forcefully opened the wooden box. Both looked inside. It wasn't the expected warfire card or some precious item, but an old, rusty pendant necklace. The thin chain on the pendant was rotted away, only leaving behind the metallic circular pendant, lonely inside the wooden box. What's this? Grigor frowned even deeper. A special feeling arose in her heart. She picked up the pendant and gently touched the edge, indeed finding a protrusion. Instinctively, she pressed it. Click! The pendant sprang open, revealing the compartment inside. In the middle of the compartment, 4 characters Grigor were engraved. Grigor's pupils dilated suddenly, her hand subconsciously tightened its grip on the old silver pendant. A wave of long-sealed memories suddenly surfaced in her mind. She remembered this was her father's. It had been many years since she had seen her father. A long-suppressed sorrow surged up from the depths of her heart. Taking a deep breath, she asked, You said Fang Hao sent this over? Yes. Where is he? Grigor asked. A guard brought it over, saying if it belongs to you, to return it to you, otherwise, he would take it back, the attendant explained. Grigor remained silent, her hand still tightly grasping the pendant. After a long silence, she finally said, Prepare the carriage, we're going to Fang Hao's place. Yes, Chairwoman. Night fell. The Dragon Ascend Tavern. At this moment, the private room on the 3rd floor was filled with people. Everyone was toasting and bustling with noise. As the organizer, Hubert then gently knocked on the table, capturing everyone's attention. He then declared loudly, Gentlemen, the matter of the 6th Upper Senate member is critical. We must stand united. If Rebecca enters the Upper Senate, none of us will have good days ahead. The people below were all local representatives of the legislature. Rebecca had met and talked to some of them, while others she hadn't met. Now, Hubert had gathered them again to revisit this matter. They exchanged glances. One person spoke up, Rest assured, Hubert, unless that little lady spends a night with me, there's no way I'll agree. Rebecca wanting to enter the Upper Senate is a mere fantasy. Exactly, let alone the Upper Senate, she might not even make it through the Lower Senate. Seeing that everyone largely shared the same sentiment, Hubert also showed a smile. He continued, Then it's settled, no one casts that vote. Agreed, it's decided. We cannot let this woman enter the Upper Senate. The Hall of Justice. The hall was brightly lit. Doherty sipped his tea and asked softly, Archbishop, what brings you here at this time? Do you have something important to discuss? Archbishop Milton, sitting across from him. It's still about tomorrow's council. I presume Rebecca also promised you some goods. What is the Hall of Justice's stance? Milton asked softly. Doherty glanced at him. Promising support with some dwarf machinery. What has she promised the church? Clothings and armors, and not a small quantity. Milton set down his teacup. These sound about right. What does the Archbishop suggest? I think, we should not let her enter the Upper Senate. Chapter 992. Parliament Hall. Members of the Parliament gradually entered and took their seats in their respective places. There were 3 areas for the members' seats. At the bottom were representatives from associations, unions, and civilian delegates. The middle area was for representatives from the 100 cities, and above them were the 5 giants of the upper house. Hey! Does your union agree with this matter? In the lower area, nearby members gathered together. Don't ask me, do you agree with it? A representative of the union retorted. Rebecca has talked to our union, we agree with this vote, supporting her entry into the upper house, but as for the result, that's beyond our control. She wants to get in, but I see it as difficult. Not to mention whether the upper house would allow her entry, the majority in the lower house are united in boycotting her. Another member leaned in, I know some of this. Grote has been busy these days, getting members of the lower house to join forces against Rebecca's entry into the upper house. They have a feud, of course, they can't let her succeed. So what's the situation like now? In the lower house, are there many who support her? Hard to say. I heard Rebecca's young husband is quite impressive, promising quite a lot of benefits. Also, there are quite a few people who will support them. Actually, if you think about it, Rebecca is really something. After all these years, who would have thought she would be the one nominated for the upper house? Haha, what does that have to do with us? It's just a good show to watch. True that. The 100 Cities members area. How's the situation? Grote walked up from below and asked in a low voice. Hubert, seated in a chair, turned back and said, no problem. Even if Rebecca has convinced more people, as long as we hold half the votes, she can forget about entering the upper house. After saying that, he asked, your side is proceeding smoothly too, right? Fairly smooth. Rebecca's haughty nature doesn't win her many friends in the city. A little persuasion, and basically few support her, Grote replied. Hubert nodded, continuing in a lowered voice, I've heard that the upper house won't agree to this matter either. Her chances of succeeding are slim. That's for the best, to completely block her entry into the upper house. This is also an opportunity. The city lord plans to make some moves, intending Nasir City to be nominated for the upper house next year, Hubert continued. Hubert was the parliamentary representative of Nasir City. Grote was startled, he hadn't expected Nasir City to set its sights on the upper house as well. Don't worry, I understand. I'll help you out when the time comes. Good, that's what friends are for. The city lord won't let your assistance go unrewarded. Grote smiled and continued, it's about time. I'll go remind those people one more time so that no mistakes happen later. Right. Time passed slowly. Members' seats gradually filled up. A chaotic buzz, everyone discussing in low voices about Rebecca's entry into the upper house. Some supported, some opposed. The most up-to-date novellas are published on Fruit Noello. Their voices overshadowed the nearby music. Boom. At that moment, the bell rang. At the very top of the hall, 3 enormous banners unfurled from the ceiling. The music being played on the side suddenly grew louder, shifting from calm to powerful and uplifting. The entire hall fell silent. Amidst the applause of everyone, the 5 giants of the upper house walked out from the back. They each took their respective seats. Once the applause had quieted down a bit, Doherty stood up and said, everyone is clear about the purpose of this parliamentary decision. Now, I invite the city lord of Lyss City to make the final statement. As soon as the words fell, from the back of the high platform, a young man dressed in blue regal attire walked out, bearing a warm smile as he approached the center, bowing in the noble fashion to those below. Then he spoke directly, Lyss City, holding to the concept of a common human destiny, bearing the responsibility of the 100 cities delegates, fought side by side with the Federation, never retreating in the face of the Undead campaign. Learning that the fierce Undead assault could threaten the Federation and the safety of the cities, Lyss City did its utmost to contact allies and share the Federation's burden, thus earning this nomination opportunity. Here, I can promise, once Lyss City enters the upper house, we will comply with parliamentary rules and assist the various unions and associations as well as help build the basic infrastructure of the cities and towns. Fang Hao stood on the podium, loudly reading from the manuscript in his hand. The campaign speech had been written by someone he found on the channel, and the content was indeed not bad. The ensuing promises were about what Lyss City entering the upper house would bring to everyone. These were mostly formalities, meant more to be heard by the audience. Even if one were to enter the upper house, these matters weren't something a single party could decide alone. Fang Hao finished reading all 5 sections of the content. Below, there was complete silence. Even though entering the upper house was a serious matter, no one's campaign speech had ever been so extensive or formal. Moreover, even when Doherty had made his declaration upon taking leadership, it wasn't as eloquent as this manuscript. As Fang Hao's voice fell, a member below spoke out, City Lord Fang Hao, there are rumors that you are just a man kept by Rebecca. Can you represent Lyss City? Fang Hao frowned, replying, between husband and wife, there's mutual reliance, there's no question of who keeps whom. Moreover, I can represent Lyss City. Chapter 993. Another person stood up. Fang Hao, the city lord of Lyss City, is the power in your hands, or is it in Rebecca's hands? City Lord Fang Hao, after entering the upper council, what is the first thing you plan to do? You've been the city lord for less than a year, what makes you think you are capable of entering the upper council? Rebecca is a half-elf, and you are a transmigrator, can you guarantee that these won't be problematic? Fang Hao answered each question, but his eyebrows were already furrowed. It was evident that some people had already prepared to target him, asking tricky and spiteful questions. Moreover, the order of the people asking questions was one after another. After answering one, the next question followed closely behind. To say they hadn't prepared, not even a dog would believe it. Bang bang! He had answered more than 20 questions in a row. Only then did Doherty reluctantly knock on the desk to quiet the scene. Looking towards Fang Hao, City Lord Fang Hao, is there anything else you would like to add? Fang Hao shook his head, nothing else. Alright, then let's start the voting. The voting here was also very simple. There were no high-tech elements involved, each council member had one vote, agreeing means tossing the vote into the agree box, disagreeing, into the other one. Everyone proceeded to enter the room and began dropping their votes into the boxes one by one. Standing to the side, Fang Hao could tell from the number of people, there seemed to be more opposing than supporting. Finally, the voting ended. Some staff began to check the vote count. Doherty spoke, all right, I declare the result. Lyss City does not meet the number of votes required to enter the upper council, and thus cannot enter. Whoosh! A buzz arose from below, with some rejoicing and cheering, while others showed disappointment. Fang Hao glanced down, then at the upper council above, feeling a surge of anger in his heart. They hadn't even reached the step of voting in the upper council before being outright rejected by the lower council. It seems his terms failed to sway the upper council. Otherwise, even if there were oppositions, they wouldn't have resulted in today's chaotic situation that was almost like a street brawl. Doherty, then looking to the side, said, City Lord Fang Hao, I regret to inform you that you did not pass. Do you have anything else to add now? Fang Hao still smiled, nothing. Good, then the council is adjourned. The 5 giants left the scene, and others also got up amidst discussions, walking out in groups. See, I told you they wouldn't succeed. What a pity, such a rare chance to enter the upper council. Forget the lower council, the upper council would never allow them. Exactly, Doherty just casually mentioned a nomination, and they took it seriously. Hubert and Grote were walking out together. Grote, not bothering to lower his voice, announced loudly, Gentlemen, today I suddenly recalled a happy matter, I have reserved a feast at Dragon Ascent Banquet Hall and would like to invite everyone to join me in celebration. As people walked out, they stopped in their tracks. Laughing as they turned back, of course, it's a joy for all of us. Just now, I also remembered something joyous. We must celebrate properly, ha ha ha. Listening to everyone's taunts and jeers, Fang Hao walked expressionlessly to a corridor on the side where Rebecca was waiting for him. Seeing Fang Hao, she immediately took his arm. Gently consoling, it's okay, it's just a nomination. It doesn't matter whether we're in or not. Before, it was Fang Hao comforting her, and now it had turned around. The attitude of everyone just now, and the mockery of Grote and the others in the hall. She heard it all and worried it might infuriate Fang Hao. Fang Hao looked outside and said, they dare to make such a scene only with the upper council's tacit approval, thinking I'm really begging them. Embracing her waist, he said, let's leave Silverwing City today. The two hurried out, ignoring the ridicule from people along the way and went straight into the carriage, heading towards their residence. Back at their place, Rebecca's face was still ugly. They had spent so much time, so much effort. In the end, it was all a joke. Not even passing the first step, the lower council vote, let alone the vote of the 5 giants. Should I say goodbye to Olivia before we leave? Rebecca suggested. Regardless of the outcome, her best friend had sincerely helped her. Fang Hao shook his head, just say it through the sound transmitting shell, let's leave now. After quickly packing up, he took Rebecca by the hand, directly boarding the carriage. Under the protection of a few Lionheart Knights, the carriage left Lyss City, heading towards Li Rong's city. There at Li Rong's place, after briefly explaining the situation, they used a teleport spell to return to Lyss City again. As soon as Fang Hao's feet touched the carpet of Lyss City, he opened the Book of Lords and sent a message to Dong Jiayu. Tonight, lay siege to the Federation's fort of Santier, and reject any form of communication or negotiation with the Federation. After a few seconds, Dong Jiayu replied with a single word, "Oh." Fort of Santier, at the border. The pitch-black sky was void of any stars. As if someone had covered the entire land with an opaque veil. Although the war had ended, the Human Alliance forces were still on the border, having drawn a long line of vigilance. Numerous troops were stationed here, preventing any possible danger. To humans, the Blood Clan posed a threat no less than the undead. Chapter 994. I don't know when we'll be able to withdraw. A patrol squad muttered quietly as they walked along the road. In the military, such words were not permitted. But when out and accompanied by fellows from the same city, complaints were inevitable. Humph! Just wait, after all the mages and the churches have pulled out, then it'll be our turn. We charge first in battle and retreat last. We're the ones who get exhausted the most. Exhausted? The others go back to rewards and lands, while we might get a few more silver coins at most. Forget it, some people say we'll get gold coins. Gold coins for those who die in battle, do you dare to take that money? Stop talking nonsense. Halfway through his sentence, the man suddenly paused, curiously asking, "Did you hear something?" The others all listened intently, their faces changing instantaneously. One of them, somewhat panicked, took out a flare and shot it ahead. Whoosh pop! The flare illuminated the distant sky in shades of orange and red, revealing the scene below to everyone. Crowds of undead were advancing toward them. The group stared wide-eyed, frozen in place. Suddenly, one of them turned and ran, shouting loudly, "The undead are attacking!" The rest of the group snapped out of it, stumbling as they ran toward the rear. They shouted loudly, "The undead are attacking! The undead have started attacking again!" In an instant, the glow of torches lit up the camp brightly. Whoosh whoosh whoosh! Several flares, trailing flames, lit up the area ahead. All one could see were dense masses of the undead army, carrying weapons and moving swiftly in the dead of night. When the flares exploded in the sky, it was as if they had given a signal. The undead who had just been marching forward started to run crazily. They charged directly at the human battle lines. Bang bang bang! The alarm bell rang, and the camp became utterly chaotic. Shortly thereafter, a barrage of intense gunfire thundered, smashing into the enemy ranks. The recent peace had not lasted even half a month before it was again shattered. The battle between the undead and humans flared up once more. Silverwing City. Bang bang bang! A rapid, heavy knock on the door suddenly erupted. Doherty, who had just fallen asleep, sat up abruptly with a groan, demanding in a deep voice, "What is it?" "Leader Doherty, there's news from the fort of Alexandra. The Blood Clan's forces have crossed the border and launched an attack, the Alliance's lines have broken, all troops are retreating to the fort of Alexandra," a hurried voice came from outside the door. "What?" Doherty's face changed instantly, he immediately sat up and rushed out after throwing on a coat. Outside, a guard was holding the sound-transmitting shell for communicating with the fort of Alexandra. Doherty snatched it and put it to his mouth, saying, "What's happening at the fort of Alexandra?" Soon, the sound-transmitting shell conveyed the message. It was Nidam, stationed commander from the Hall of Justice. The Blood Clan launched a midnight attack, breaking through the Allied forces' line. Currently, the Allied forces have retreated to the fort of Alexandra. Doherty's face underwent a severe change. They had just solved the situation with Otis, and now the Blood Clan had started attacking humans again. What did the Blood Clan say? Nidam replied, "They haven't given any response." Can the fort of Alexandra hold against the Blood Clan's forces? Doherty persisted. Once they besiege us, it will be hard to hold. If we can't communicate with the Blood Clan, I suggest we withdraw and re-establish the defense line in the next city sector. Chapter 995. Tap, tap, tap. On the streets late at night, batch after batch of marching armies appeared, along with carriages rushing to the council hall. The councillors, dragged out of bed. They got off the carriages, sleepily and somewhat confusedly walked into the council hall. What's going on? Has something major happened? Not sure, but we'd better hurry up, so we don't arrive late and miss something important. Exactly, let's hurry up. Soon, the originally empty hall was filled with counselors. Some still emitted the smell of alcohol, having been dragged out by guards from taverns. Drowsily, they kept nodding their heads. Soon, Doherty, Milton, and other 3 leaders walked out from behind. There was no opening speech. Doherty directly said, Santiago Fortress has sent the latest news: the army of the Blood Clan has broken through our lines and officially launched an attack on the Federation. The Federation army is now trapped inside Santiago Fortress. Whoosh! As soon as this statement was made, the whole room exploded. The war had begun again. Didn't we sign a treaty? How could they do this? These damned vampires, they never stick to agreements. How is this possible? How could they break through the Allied defense so quickly? With the mobility of the undead, once they break through Santiago Fortress, it would be very difficult for the Allied forces to stop their advance. What are we going to do now? It's over. Damn it, what do we do, what do we do? After loudly cursing the Blood Clan, everyone started to worry. With the Blood Clan breaking the line directly, plus the mobility of the undead, it would be very difficult for humans to keep up with the pace if the enemy attacked. Especially, as a group of troops had just been withdrawn from the front and were currently on their way back. With no villages in front or shops behind, they were impossible to contact either. The fear previously brought by Odis once again rose from the depths of their hearts. Compared to commoners, these nobles, enjoying finer resources, feared death even more. Bang, bang, bang. Doherty forcefully knocked on the table, quieting everyone down. Loudly, he said, time is pressing, every minute we delay makes the situation more dangerous. Everyone think about what we should do to solve the current crisis. The crowd instantly fell silent. Mobilizing troops now was simply too late. The upper chamber had no solutions, let alone the people in the lower chamber. After a brief silence, someone suggested, see if we can talk it out. Even if it doesn't solve the problem, it might delay things. Yes, there must be some reason for starting a war. The Federation also promised the Blood Clan 30 million in funding, don't they want it anymore? Doherty answered, the Blood Clan refuses to communicate with the Federation anymore. We absolutely can't contact them. All the sieges are led by low-ranking undead. Anyone we send out will immediately be attacked. This. The Blood Clan was determined to start a war. They simply stopped communicating with the Federation. The hall fell silent once again. Fear and helplessness enveloped everyone's hearts. They suddenly realized that they, the nobles and councillors, only had some status amongst humans. On a global scale, they didn't even have the qualifications to speak or negotiate. As this atmosphere became increasingly gloomy and oppressive, someone suddenly said, last time, wasn't it Rebecca who contacted the Blood Clan? In that moment, everyone was awakened. Right, wasn't it Rebecca who coordinated with the Blood Clan to establish the Federation? Everyone's gaze turned uniformly toward the position of Lyss City. But there, only 2 chairs were placed, and there was no sign of people. Doherty immediately asked, where is Rebecca? Why isn't she here? At this moment, a guard from the Hall of Justice spoke, Leader, Rebecca left Silverwing City and started her journey back after the daytime assembly ended. That fast? Everyone was taken aback. The assembly had ended at noon, and she had left directly after. But upon further thought, it also made sense, having been humiliated by everyone at the assembly, anyone would probably have left the place as quickly as possible. If you can't beat them, can't you just avoid them? Doherty, infuriated, asked, what about the councillor from Lyss City? Why hasn't the councillor arrived either? The attendant continued to reply, it is said that the councillor also left along with her. This, everyone was dumbfounded. What did this mean? Taking the stationed councillor along as well, was this an attempt to break away from the council? Or was it a move to leave the Federation of 100 cities? If the Blood Clan's attack tonight hadn't happened, the councillors present would have been very happy to see Rebecca and the council at loggerheads. The bigger the fallout, the better to watch the drama unfold. But now, the situation was different. Rebecca had become the only person who could save them. Obviously, they still needed Rebecca to step in during the crisis. At this moment, everyone had the same thought in mind. It was over, they had offended Rebecca too severely during the day. All the councillors accused each other in the form of questions. Now, she wouldn't be bothered with any of it, do as you wish. On the stage, Doherty also furrowed his brows tightly together, his gaze briefly meeting the Archbishop's. He was also somewhat regretful, having made things turn out this way, even bringing himself to ask for Rebecca's help seemed difficult now. The Archbishop slightly nodded, signifying that this was the only way now. Doherty, shouting, said, "Use the sound transmitting shell to contact LYSS City." One of the guards stepped down, but quickly returned. He spoke in a low voice, "Leader, there is no response from LYSS City." Chapter 996. Whoosh. The chaos escalated, with no one responding. This Rebecca, as always, was tough. Was she really ready to perish along with everyone else over this? Normally speaking, LYSS City's team should be on their way back by now. "I think we should immediately arrange for the cavalry to pursue them along the route and bring Rebecca back," a council member finally spoke up loudly. "Right, contacting LYSS City is useless, they should be on the road now." Yes, quickly deploy the troops to capture her." Doherty nodded and immediately ordered the cavalry to start chasing the LYSS City convoy. But within, his heart had already sunk. They were out of time. The Blood Clan could attack the fortress at any moment, and with the current defense force, they simply couldn't hold it. Perhaps they should retreat, abandon this city, and fall back to the next one to reorganize the defense. Time, they needed time. After no member of the council proposed any significantly better ideas, Doherty could only say, "Everyone go back, let all the cities know, continue to mobilize troops, prepare to support the front lines, and the rest of the council members should also prepare to fully cooperate in this war." "All right, that's all," meeting adjourned. Everyone stood up, weighed down with heavy hearts as they left. There was none of the joy seen at the end of the day's earlier session. A denser presence of death than even in Odie's hung over each person's heart. All night long, guards shuffled through the streets, council members' carriages constantly shuttled back and forth between the council and their residences. When dawn broke over the usually bustling streets, they too turned eerily deserted. As if an invisible gloom had enshrouded the entire city. Whether the wealthy district or the ordinary residential areas, all felt the change in atmosphere and started to become extremely anxious. And at the front line, the latest news came back: the fortress had fallen. After losing tens of thousands of troops, they abandoned the fort and fled, falling back to regroup their defenses. Abandoning the fort had provided humanity a brief respite. No need to be bitten too fiercely by the undead. Inside the council hall, Doherty, Milton, and Grigor Ya sat together in the hall. All with rather dejected expressions. They had held many emergency meetings through the night, but against the Blood Clan, which refused to communicate, they were out of options. And from the front lines, the news came back: this second defense line only managed to slow the enemy's offensive speed, defeating them was clearly impossible. Silverwing City also believed these reports were true. After all, sweeping through the great cemetery of Odis and conquering Blackhorn City in a single night was enough to demonstrate the Blood Clan's formidable strength. "Any news from Rebecca?" Milton started the conversation. Doherty shook his head. The cavalry found no trace of LYSS City's convoy. They must have taken some back road, or changed their route along the way. Now, everyone could only pin their hopes on Rebecca, yet she was nowhere to be found. No one responded on the sound transmitting shell, even searching along the road had turned up nothing. It was as if she had simply vanished off the face of the earth. Who would have thought things would turn out this way? Milton sighed. All the council members, not one wasn't regretful. Even if LYSS City hadn't joined the upper senate, they shouldn't have embarrassed Rebecca like that. "Thinking about these now is useless, we should rather discuss how to convince her, once we see Rebecca, to help us establish contact with the Blood Clan," Doherty said. Rebecca was famously stubborn among the council members. This time, by leaving directly, she was clearly angry. If she could be caught on the way back, it would still be negotiable, as they could coerce her to represent the council. But since she wasn't found, once back in LYSS City, they would have to use terms to persuade her. At this, Grigor Ya spoke up: "It's hard to say." "Why is it hard to say?" Milton was taken aback. Grigor Ya continued: "Previously, when Doherty proposed to promote her to the Senate, Rebecca helped the Federation solve a problem, yet not only did she receive no benefits, she was met with scorn and ridicule from the entire room. Not just Rebecca, anyone in her place would hardly trust your words now." This. Doherty and Milton both paused momentarily. Put like that, Rebecca indeed faced an unfair treatment. At the time, they were only considering how Lyss City entering the Senate would affect them. They had forgotten about Rebecca's contributions. The Senate, and even the entire council, had turned into thankless, bridge-burning entities. Then President Grigorya, what do you think we should do? Doherty asked. Grigorya shook her head, I'm not sure, if it comes to that, you might allow Rebecca to set her terms, see what she wants. The other two fell silent, falling into deep thought. Add latest chapters at freehodnovlo only. If they let her make demands, what if she asked for something excessive? To agree or not to agree? At that moment, footsteps approached quickly, and a guard walked in. He said, Leader, your wife has received a message from Rebecca, asking if you need to contact Rebecca. The expressions of the three on their seats all changed. That's when Doherty suddenly remembered, his wife and Rebecca had a private sound transmitting shell. If he couldn't get through, as Rebecca's best friend, she certainly could. The sound transmitting shell, bring it here. The guard handed over the sound transmitting shell that he brought. Doherty took it, took a deep breath, and began, Rebecca, it's Doherty. Last night's meeting, why didn't the representative from Lyss City attend? Chapter 997. There was a moment of silence on the other end before a cold voice came through, what is it? There's an important matter at the council that requires Lyss City's participation, Doherty continued. The representative from Lyss City is unwell, and a new representative is being selected. We'll talk again once that's settled. She really was angry. In the whole Federation, there weren't many who dared to speak to Doherty in such a manner, if any at all. At this moment, Doherty didn't know what to say. After some thought, he continued, where are you now? Return to Silverwing City immediately for the upcoming meetings. Another brief silence followed before the reply came, I'm already back in Lyss City, and for this year's meetings, Lyss City will not be attending. Good gracious! The three heavyweights present were all somewhat dumbfounded. When Rebecca got angry, she didn't even consider Doherty worth her attention. You decide whatever you want to decide, we, Lyss City, will not be participating. After that, whatever Doherty said was met with silence from the other side. Grote's mansion. Bang! 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 The door was being knocked on fiercely. Grote, bleary-eyed, rubbed his still swollen head. He tossed aside the arm of the woman lying next to him and shouted towards the door, what's the matter? He hadn't slept off the previous night's drinking by the time the knocking had rudely awakened him, and he was full of anger. And from outside the door, the butler's voice came. Master, more than 20 counselors have arrived this morning and are waiting for you in the hall. If you don't get up now, I fear they're going to burst in, the butler immediately said. Grote frowned, rubbing his head again. He grabbed roughly at the still sleeping woman next to him before continuing to ask toward the door, what are they here for? Didn't we finish hosting them last night? I'm not sure, sir, but it seems it's not about last night's banquet. The counselors arrived with quite a bit of fury, the butler immediately responded. Fury? Damn it, what's there to be furious about this early in the morning? Grote cursed, but he still climbed out of bed with difficulty. He woke up the woman beside him to help him get dressed. Then he opened the door and went out. Where are they? Grote, holding onto the wall, asked. In the hall. Let's go, I want to see who's come to trouble me, Grote said irritably. With the support of the butler, Grote made his way to the hall. Upon entering, he saw that the room was filled with people. Looking closely, he recognized them. It was none other than the counselors he had been entertaining the past few days, those united in opposition to Rebecca. Early in the morning, instead of staying home with their mistresses, they were sitting here in my place. He muttered to himself internally, but a smile still appeared on his face. Hey, everyone still hasn't had enough fun? I'm really struggling to keep up. Tonight, as usual, we'll continue at the Dragon Rise Swallow Banquet Hall. Grote greeted them loudly. He seemed exceptionally generous in spirit. But the hall was unusually cold. Across from him, no one revealed a smile, but glared at him with anger. Grote's smile became a bit stiff. What's wrong with everyone? He had drunk too much last night and had slept until now. He knew nothing of what had happened. But from everyone's expressions, he could feel something unusual was going on. Did I go on a drunken rampage last night and harm someone in their family? Why does everyone look at me like I'm their enemy? At that moment, someone squeezed through the crowd, a person who was one of the heads of the Federal Commerce Association. Last night, as Grote could not be roused for the Federal Conference, this person had taken his place. Approaching, he whispered, "Last night the Blood Clan attacked Fort Santer, and the Federation held 5 emergency meetings from then until now. Everyone's been looking for Rebecca." Grote's brows furrowed tighter, still somewhat slow to react. He asked subconsciously, "Looking for her for what?" "To contact the Blood Clan, of course. Otherwise, if this fight continues, the entire Federation may be lost." "The Federation may be lost?" Grote instantly sobered up. Chapter 998. Is the Federation going to fall? Upon hearing these words, Grote abruptly came somewhat to his senses. The Blood Clan has attacked the Federation, damn it, how could they suddenly violate the treaty? Grote had just realized the gravity of the situation and had yet to figure out what it had to do with Rebecca. The waiting counselors had already started speaking out. "Grote, are you trying to get us all killed? Why did I ever listen to someone like you and make such a mistake? Grote, you maggot of the Federation! You are a disgrace to the Marshall family." The torrent of insults nearly knocked Grote off balance. But he quickly realized the severity of the issue at hand. Each of the counselors here was a cunning old fox, rushing to criticize him and disassociate from him, clearly attempting to prove something. Could it be that the council, unable to find Rebecca, was looking to place the blame on his own head? That shouldn't be the case, as many had voted against it, and it was mainly sanctioned by the upper house, after all. Listening to the reprimanding voices around him, Grote felt irritated but couldn't just retaliate against so many counselors outright. He could only say, "Yesterday's decision was made collectively by us all, how come it has come down to me deceiving everyone? Besides, nothing has been finalized yet, I believe everyone's worries are somewhat premature." After all, coming from a great family, he knew how to phrase his words. It was a collective discussion, and there was no such thing as him deceiving anyone. Moreover, the final verdict had not yet been settled, so it was indeed too early to conclude who was right and who was wrong. Upon hearing this, the crowd got even more furious. "Grote, from now on, we don't know each other. Also, I am cancelling all collaboration with the Marshall family." "Humph, disgraceful." One by one, they cursed and started to leave. Grote did not try to stop or retain them. That's just how the world of the nobility worked, quick to dissociate when it came to some matters. Once the momentum passed, they would start mingling with one another again. In the end, it all boiled down to interests. Once everyone had left cursing and swearing, Grote then said, "Prepare the carriage, go to Hubert's residence." The whole street was deserted. The carriage proceeded rapidly and soon neared Hubert's mansion. But from a distance, he noticed that there were quite a few people blocking the gate, also cursing about shamelessness and parasites of some sort. Grote was startled and immediately said, "Don't stop, go past, we'll come back later." Without halting, the carriage drove straight past Hubert's front door. At this moment, Grote finally realized. The situation seemed to be more serious than he had thought. Lyss City. Rebecca sat behind her desk and, with a bang, threw the conch in her hand onto the table. Her chest heaved dramatically. Rebecca also felt wronged. It was them who promised her a place in the upper council, how did it end up as if she was the one begging to join? And to be pointed at and scolded by everyone, mocked for lack of ability and delusional aspirations. Seeing Rebecca with a gloomy expression, Fang Hao immediately approached her. He helped to calm the anger in her chest and said softly, "Sweetheart, don't be angry, soon they will come over, begging you to go back. You can make any demands you wish at that time." Rebecca frowned. Curiously asking, what exactly happened last night, Doherty sounded quite urgent. Fang Hao didn't hide anything from her, outright saying, "I ordered Amanda's troops to attack Sant Fort. Now, you are the only one who can contact them. If the Federation still wants to solve this peacefully, they will seek you out to discuss this matter." Rebecca, wide-eyed, looked at him in astonishment. She hadn't expected him to take such measures. Starting a war directly, won't that make the situation uncontrollable? Rebecca said. Fang Hao shook his head, "No worries, the Federation's council is nothing but a bunch of good-for-nothings, you couldn't achieve anything by discussing with them anyway, it's better to give them a beating." Rebecca was somewhat slow to react and paid no mind to his increasingly presumptuous hand. Continuing on, she said, "You mentioned Doherty will come over. It may not necessarily be Doherty, but the council will definitely send someone. They'll want you to step in and mediate with the Blood Clan. Be prepared for that moment. Prepared for what? Prepare for revenge. 8 a.m. In Lyss City Square, a dazzling array appeared. When the array vanished, several figures emerged from it. The leader, tall and imposing, was none other than the head of the Hall of Justice, Doherty. The two others were the Bishop of the Church and the Mage of the Association, respectively. As it wasn't their first visit to Lyss City, they were quite familiar with the place. After explaining their identities to the guards who had gathered around, they hurried to the city lord's mansion. In the council hall, Doherty finally saw Rebecca, who was lightly made up in a long blue dress. The most up-to-date novellas are published on Fruitnoello. Without any unnecessary pleasantries, Rebecca, with a cold demeanor, started, "Head Doherty, do you have some important matter for coming to my Lyss city?" Doherty took his place on a nearby seat and bluntly stated, "Rebecca, last night the Blood Clan launched an attack on the Federation. They have now occupied Sant Fort, and the Federation is currently facing unprecedented danger." Rebecca showed the appropriate surprise. Then she questioned, "This seems to have little to do with me, or with Lyss City. The Federation is unclear as to why war was declared all of a sudden, and the Blood Clan is refusing to communicate with us," Doherty explained. Chapter 999. So. Therefore, I hope you could try to make contact with the Blood Clan and help the Federation end this meaningless war. From his words, it was clear that Doherty had no confidence in this war. He just wanted to quickly find out the reason behind the Blood Clan's sudden declaration of war and to end the conflict. Rebecca, with a slightly mocking expression, said, "Leader Doherty, not to mention my lack of ability to persuade the Blood Clan, even if I had the capability, as an elf hybrid and a woman, with the meager foundations of Lyss City, how could I stand forth? The Hall of Justice, the Church, the three city lords, who among them doesn't have more credibility and the right to do so than I?" These words were echoes of the voices questioning her in yesterday's council meeting. The entire council had turned into a denouncement session. They spoke as if Fang Hao and Rebecca were good for nothing, nearly wishing to expel them from their ranks. After finishing venting, "You all felt better and now you want to come to me to handle matters. Where is the justice in that?" Doherty's face also grew unnatural. In the past, no council member would dare to mock the council in front of him. But now, facing Rebecca, he really had nothing to say. After a moment of silence, he continued, "Some people in the council do not trust you, which is quite normal. Don't let these things affect your mood negatively. There are no hard feelings. I simply don't have the ability to persuade the Blood Clan. You should ask the other council members, Leader Doherty," Rebecca said directly. Seeing Rebecca's attitude, the three who had come stiffened their expressions. A bishop who was accompanying them said coldly, "Rebecca, the Federation is facing danger now. This is not the time for you to be throwing a tantrum. Humph. Such a big deal, direct your temper at the Blood Clan, at the undead instead. What does it mean to keep bullying me, a woman?" Rebecca remained unmoved, saying indifferently, "You." The bishop wanted to continue, but Doherty stopped him. Doherty went on to say, "Rebecca, this time you will not be facing the matter alone. If you can persuade the Blood Clan, not only will Lyss City join the upper council, but the Federation will also subsidize the development of Lyss City. Do you think I can be fooled twice by the same words? This time, the council can pass it directly. I can assure you that you will enter the upper council, and there will be no mistakes," Doherty continued. This was the first time Doherty had ever made such a concession in front of a lower council member. Moreover, he seemed fearful that she would persist in her refusal. Rebecca fell silent for a moment, but then said, "I'm sorry, I can't help." Doherty's eyes instantly narrowed. In his gaze, there flashed a dangerous light as he stared at Rebecca. At the same time, Dmitrija, standing beside Rebecca, stepped forward, resting one hand on the hilt of his sword. "Tell me, what are your conditions?" Doherty compromised yet again. Rebecca said, "I demand the right to appoint 50 council members, chosen by me. Lyss City will have permanent self-governance, 20 million in development funds, army stationing rights, military passage rights through the territory, and emergency military call-up rights." "What, are you mad?" The three were all shocked. Those conditions were not just harsh, they were a complete replica of the privileges of the Hall of Justice and the Church. self-governance, troop movement, and troop deployment rights. These were all above the prerogatives of the other city lords in the upper council, placing her on equal footing with the Hall of Justice and the Church. Such brazen ambition! Rebecca, you must be clear about what you are saying. These aren't things one can discuss casually, the church bishop sternly reminded. Rebecca looked at him and said, I'm well aware of what I'm saying. These are my conditions, and you can refuse them. Still uncompromising. This woman was a maniac. Piss her off, and she would dare say anything, dare do anything. Especially at such a critical time. The more domineering Rebecca became, the more the three believed that she was prepared to take everyone down with her. Rebecca, with the power Lyss City has, what use are these rights to you? Can you even maintain such a military force? Asked another mage who had come along, speaking softly. These matters didn't have much to do with the Mages Association, but represented the council's position. He still needed to assert his stance. You needn't worry about it, it's my business, she said. You. The bishop was infuriated to the point of speechlessness. Why did they have to provoke this lunatic? Doherty hadn't expected that the woman who normally gossiped with his wife would become so reckless when angered. Taking a deep breath, he said, Rebecca, these conditions are difficult for me to decide on alone. This back and forth is likely to just waste time, so perhaps. Doherty leader, nothing is ready, are you deceiving me again? There's nothing to discuss. If the Blood Clan attacks, Lyss City will also deploy troops to fight. If we really can't hold them off, then we all die together. It's not a big deal. Rebecca cut in sharply. You. Doherty's brow furrowed. After exchanging glances with the two beside him, he slapped the chair and suddenly stood up. It was just such an action. Like flipping some sort of switch. Dimitrija immediately stepped in front of Rebecca. And from the first floor, a mass of gold-armored guards rushed out, while from behind the banisters on the second floor, a row of oddly shaped muskets extended past the rails, aiming toward the back. The three men narrowed their eyes. Rebecca was about to retaliate. Just one small move from the three men, and Rebecca would definitely order their killing. Even if Doherty was an orange hero, capable of fighting 100, could he fight 1,000, 10,000? This was ultimately Lyss City, where he could be buried under sheer numbers. Doherty leader, if your legs are numb, you can move around, but don't make any sudden moves. The things here in Lyss City are not as sturdy as in Silverwing City, Dimitrija said, protecting Rebecca and speaking in a less than perfect common language. Doherty narrowed his eyes slightly and took another look at Rebecca, who also seemed a bit tense. He said, Rebecca, can your terms not be lowered any further? I don't feel the conditions are too high, she replied. All right, I need to go back and discuss it with the council and give you a reply as soon as possible, Doherty stated. All right, then we won't keep you for a feast, she responded. Doherty, still dissatisfied, glanced at the person next to him. The latter pulled out a scroll, and upon opening it, a magic erase light enveloped the three. They vanished from the spot. Rebecca stood and declared, in the next few days, citywide vigilance. Anyone using teleportation to enter the city, if their identity cannot be confirmed, eliminate them immediately. No need to hold back. Yes, sir. A chorus of soldiers responded in unison. At the time Rebecca was meeting with Doherty. In front of a room along the corridor. Knock, knock. A deep knock sounded at the door. There was no response from inside, but the door opened on its own. Inside the room, Rolina of the Blood Clan lay lazily on a soft couch, holding two pieces of paper, with pastry next to her. She was eating and intently reading the content on the paper. Despite someone entering, she didn't lift her head to look. Fang Hao looked at her. Rolina was wearing a silk nightgown that hugged her body, lying on her side, outlining alluring curves. Beneath the hem of the dress, without stockings, her smooth, fair calves were exposed. Compared to her earlier frigidity, she appeared more seductive and charming. Fang Hao approached and asked softly, "You're reading this novel too? How'd you get it?" This novel was only serialized in the Transmigrators channel. Given Rolina's reclusive nature, she shouldn't have discovered it. "Didn't you say you'd keep my room for me? I went back to take a look the other day and just happened to find these novels, so I borrowed them to read," Rolina said without changing her posture. Oh, she had gone back to the main city. That's good too, it's good that she's willing to go back and move around. How is it? I didn't deceive you, did I? They were all kept for you, Fang Hao said with a smile. Rolina didn't answer but continued to focus on the content of the paper. Fang Hao moved closer and sat down at the edge of the couch. Seeing that she didn't react, he hesitated, then his hand rested on her slender waist while his own gaze dropped to the paper, asking, "Which chapter are you on?" The smooth silk sent a ripple through his heart. Rolina glanced sideways, allowing the man's small gesture. "I'm at the part where someone peeps at the lady of the house bathing." Chapter 1000. You read that quickly. Fang Hao was somewhat surprised. If she had just gotten the novel these past 2 days, the speed was a bit frightening. She must have been reading day and night. Right, Blood Clan can read in the dark, and they also don't need to worry about resting at night. Let me tell you, the lady of the house had long realized he was peeking outside. It was deliberate. Scram. His voice halted, then he asked again, "Can you understand the term system in it?" While asking, he moved in closer, pressing up against her. Rolina said, "Oracles, hey? What's there not to understand? The gods issue orders, you fulfill the requirements, and receive the corresponding rewards." That's not it, but it seems that explanation is also correct. Back then, it took him a long time to explain it to Ira and Angia before they understood some of it. If he had explained it like Rolina did back then, it probably would have been easier. Not to mention, Rolina's brain really does work quite well. "You really are clever," Fang Hao complimented. Seeing that the other party didn't speak, Fang Hao's hand that was resting on her waist became somewhat restless. Touching and kneading, he enjoyed the feeling of her soft, tight skin. Then, he quietly moved his hand downward. "Stop asking for trouble," a cold voice rang out again. The hand that had just reached the edge of a bulge paused momentarily. Then it returned to the waist, continuing to embrace her. "When you're done reading, I bought you a gift. Do you want to check it out? We can read the novel later in the evening," Fang Hao continued. Hearing about a gift, Rolina glanced up at him. She said, "Didn't I tell you not to buy me anything? Going out and bringing back some gifts for someone you like, what's wrong with that?" Rolina glared at him again, but she still swatted his hand away and sat up. "What did you buy?" "Let me see, I'll take it to Rebecca later," she said. Fang Hao was speechless. "Do you really need to give it to her? She has what you have. Moreover, she had even helped pick them out, so what's the point of sending them back to her?" Thinking this, Fang Hao's hands didn't stop. He took out each of the items one by one. One was a filigree gold inlaid wooden box, which contained a cosmetics set from Fairy Dream Tower. This was a new product, specifically made for nobility. "This is from Fairy Dream Tower, a newly released set, it must be very suitable for you," Fang Hao said. Gently opening it, an ingenious little mechanism activated, elevating all the cosmetics inside. Displayed before her. Sold to noble women, the appearance was quite attractive. Adorned with gold and silver, it looked very pretty. Rolina's eyes lit up, clearly liking it, but she quickly returned to an expressionless face, murmuring a soft hum. The second item was a purple gemstone necklace, quite large and valuable. Rolina liked black and purple, and he chose it for her because of the purple color. The third item was a new collection of stockings, including not just regular stockings but also various kinds of patterned garter stockings, mid-calf and thigh-high socks. All of them were well crafted, especially the ones with gold thread embroidery. Of these, 2 were from their own production, with only the gemstone necklace being bought. But Rolina liked them, not mentioning giving them to Rebecca, and instead held them, carefully examining them. "The beauty of the lonely knight. Lorana's loyalty towards you has increased by 5 points, current loyalty is 97. It increased by 5 points. With ordinary heroes, it's the beginning where you see the sharp increases, and it slows down the further you go. Lorana started with 1 and 2 point increases, now, a little makeup and stockings raise it by 5 points. The growth rate becomes larger later on. It must be related to their respective mindsets. Rolina is gradually accepting herself, accepting the territory, so the increase is a bit faster. Of course, this is good news. Let me help you put it on to see the effect." Fang Hao picked up the necklace. Seeing him pick it up, she turned her back to him. Rolina didn't refuse, lifting her hair to reveal her flawless neck. Draping the delicate gold chain over her slender neck. The purple gemstone hung down over her chest. Fang Hao returned to her front, examining it closely, it looks beautiful, are you an angel? Even as she tried to keep a straight face, Rolina was amused by that line, the corners of her mouth lifting into a crescent. An angel indeed, not a blood clan. Rolina stood up, went to the mirror, and looked at herself closely. She touched the necklace, feeling it was indeed quite fitting for her. I really like it, thank you, she said. Fang Hao, feeling emboldened, continued, do you want to try on the stockings? They're the latest from our tailors. Maybe next time, I'll give it a try when there's a chance, she replied. Try them on now, I'll help you see if they fit. Fang Hao pulled her over to sit down beside him and lifted her legs onto his lap. Rolina was startled by his sudden move, but in the end, she didn't resist. Fang Hao also didn't dare to be too bold. Fearing he'd get another beating, he lifted the hem of the falling skirt to the calf area. He took out a pair of thigh-high stockings. Her crystal clear foot arched slightly, and Fang Hao slid the stocking over her toes. Rolina lifted that leg a bit, and the man twisted the stocking, gently covering her white, straight calves, all the way up to her round, well-proportioned thighs. You really do like legs. It's because I like your legs, he replied. Taking out the other stocking, Rolina cooperated by laying the other leg over his. Fang Hao repeated the action just as before, only slower this time. If you enjoy my content and want more videos, support me in Ko-fi. The link in the description.